Hello everyone, tonight we begin a gentle journey into the heart of something both ancient and deeply present: compassion. Picture this: outside your window the night has arrived. Streetlights flicker. Somewhere a dog barks once, then silence again. Inside your room you've dimmed the light, maybe lit a soft candle. The world for a moment is quiet enough to listen, but even in stillness, the echoes of the day remain. Someone's sharp word, a news story that stirred your chest, the feeling of rushing, performing, trying to meet invisible expectations. You carry these things in your body even now as you try to unwind. I know, I carry them too. And that's why tonight we enter the quiet power of compassion, not the loud, heroic kind. Not the kind you post about, but the kind that hums quietly beneath the noise of the world. The kind that simply notices, gently leans in, and stays. So before you get too comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like sharing, let us know where you're listening from and what time it is there in your little corner of the world. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some gentle noise, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. There's something tender about being awake when most others are asleep. The world at night invites you to hear things more softly, not because the noise is gone, but because your defenses are quieter. It is here, in this liminal space, that compassion reveals itself. You might imagine compassion as something big, a great act of giving, a dramatic rescue, a profound sacrifice. But let's begin with something far smaller. A person sitting with someone who is grieving, saying nothing, just breathing with them. No advice, no solution, just presence. That too is compassion. We're often taught to associate value with action. If we can't fix it, we think we failed. But there is a sacred kind of help that doesn't aim to fix it, simply aims to be with. The Buddha once spoke of compassion as the trembling of the heart in response to suffering, not the tightening of judgment, not the rise of frustration, but a natural human softening, a movement inward, a bowing even. Compassion begins not in the hands, but in the heart. When you quiet yourself tonight, you might notice that there is stillness beneath all the chatter. And in that stillness, something waits, not with urgency, but with infinite patience, a readiness to care. Sometimes compassion looks like letting someone cry without interrupting. Sometimes it's remembering that the person who cut you off in traffic might be rushing to someone's hospital bed. And sometimes it's turning inward, placing a gentle hand on your own chest and saying, "That was hard today, and I'm still here." In a noisy world, this kind of softness can seem impractical. But in truth, it's one of the only things that truly heals. You don't need to change the world. You just need to change how you see it, breath by breath. Right now, you are breathing. You are listening. Already the noise outside has softened. And already something within you may be loosening its grip. Let that be enough. There's a story told in many Buddhist traditions. A man approaches the Buddha and asks, "What do I do when I feel overwhelmed by the suffering of others?" And the Buddha, in quiet voice, replies, "You do not drown in another's sorrow. You reach out a hand, firmly rooted in your own breath." In other words, compassion is not drowning with someone. It is staying afloat, holding them gently, reminding them what breath feels like. You don't have to collapse to be caring. So as we begin this journey tonight, I invite you to remember, compassion doesn't ask you to burn yourself out. It asks you to stay tender even in discomfort. even when you feel helpless, especially when you have no words. Let's breathe into that. Inhale gently and let your shoulders drop. Exhale slowly and let your jaw soften. One more breath. Nothing to do. Nowhere to go. Just here. Let the rest of this night hold you in that softness. From this point forward, we will follow the river of compassion through different valleys. Some will look like sorrow. Others will look like silence. But all will return to this, a quiet power that does not push, does not rush, and does not force. It simply is, and it welcomes you now. The stillness of the heart is not something we seek to achieve. It's something we remember. Even now, as you lie quietly, there's a rhythm inside you that is older than any worry. It doesn't shout. It doesn't try to be noticed. It simply beats. Gently, patiently, like a bell that only rings when all else has gone silent. This is where compassion begins. Not in a theory or a book, not in a rush of emotion, but in a return to what is always there, the still heart. When the Buddha spoke of metta, loving kindness, he often described it as a feeling that arises naturally in a heart free from agitation. That is when your mind no longer wrestles or resists, when it no longer picks and chooses, but simply rests. Compassion floats to the surface on its own. It's like a leaf rising to the top of a still pond. That's the kind of compassion we speak of tonight. Not the emotional wave that comes and goes when you see something moving, but the steady, deep warmth that remains even when no one else notices. You've probably felt it before. Maybe when you saw someone sitting alone at the back of a room and you didn't speak, but you felt them. Maybe when you held back a harsh word, not because you were afraid to say it, but because you realized that silence was softer. Or maybe just maybe when you sat by yourself and realized that you didn't have to be harsh to yourself anymore. That is the still heart. And in this world so loud, so demanding, this kind of heart becomes rare. Not because we've lost it, but because we've forgotten how to hear it. You might notice that people seem to speak faster now. Everything is compressed. Quicker replies. Faster reactions. We scroll quickly. We skip songs after 10 seconds. We're trained to rush, even in rest. But compassion does not rush. It waits. It takes the time to look into someone's eyes before deciding who they are. It listens to the second sentence, not just the first. It notices the tremble in a voice, not just the words spoken. And most importantly, it allows space for both pain and peace to exist at the same time. The still heart doesn't try to fix suffering right away. It acknowledges it. It bows to it. It sits beside it like an old friend. Imagine that for a moment. You sitting beside your own suffering, not trying to make it go away. Just keeping company. Just being present. That alone can begin to soften the hard places. There's a quiet teaching hidden in nature. The lotus we know grows from mud, but the process is not rushed. It moves slowly. It rises inch by inch. And only when the sun greets it does it bloom. Compassion in your own life is like this. You don't force it. You allow it to grow. You might say softly to yourself right now, I do not need to be anything more than I am to feel compassion. I do not need to have all the answers to stay kind. I do not need to speak loudly to make my presence healing. Let those words settle. You are not here to impress anyone. You are here to return to your still heart. The Buddha once said, a heart filled with loving kindness is more powerful than 1,000 swords. It sounds poetic, but it's real. Think of it, how many wounds in your own life began not with violence, but with someone's cold indifference? And how many times were you brought back to life by the quiet presence of someone who simply stayed? That is the strength of compassion, not in volume, not in drama, but in staying. If tonight your heart feels too heavy, if your chest feels too full, place a gentle hand there. You don't need to say anything. Just acknowledge the weight. Feel how even in heaviness, your heart continues to beat. It wants to be kind, not only to others, but to you. You are not unworthy of your own compassion. Sometimes we think that until we are perfect, calm, wise, forgiving, we do not deserve gentleness. But the Buddha's compassion was not reserved for saints. He embraced the broken, the angry, the lost. He looked at all beings with the same gaze. So tonight as you breathe, let the stillness in your heart come forward. Let it spread little by little into the corners you usually keep closed. This is not about forcing peace. It's about welcoming what was always waiting. Let that truth rest with you. And know this, you are already enough to embody compassion. No effort is needed, only remembrance. Not yours, not mine, but ours. That's how compassion flows. It doesn't belong to one person. It doesn't arise from pride, from control, or even from understanding. It moves like wind between hearts, no beginning, no end, no ownership. It simply lives in the space between us. Think for a moment about how often we try to hold on to things. Opinions, pain, recognition, even compassion. We sometimes want it to be seen, acknowledged, returned. But true compassion has no need to cling. Like the gentle fragrance of incense, it gives itself away freely. Whether someone notices or not, it still leaves behind a trace of sweetness. This is hard to live sometimes, I know. In a world that teaches you to defend your energy, to be cautious with your emotions, to measure every effort for reward, it's difficult to keep your heart open without expecting something in return. But tonight, we explore a different kind of heart, a heart that does not calculate, a heart that gives, because giving is its nature. Compassion, when it is pure, is not transactional. You don't give it only to those who deserve it. You don't withdraw it when someone disappoints you. You don't offer it only to those who look like you, speak like you, think like you. You offer it because you know suffering. That's what makes compassion possible, not perfection, but shared pain. The Buddha taught that all beings suffer. From kings to beggars, from saints to sinners, no one escapes the truth of change, loss, aging, separation. The moment we understand this, not just in thought, but in our bones, we begin to soften toward others. Because suddenly, we see them not as opponents or strangers, but as companions. Not yours, not mine, but ours. There's a story from the early days of the Sangha, the community of monks. One monk had become terribly ill, covered in sores, unable to move, abandoned by others out of fear or revulsion. The Buddha came to him. He washed the monk's wounds himself, gently, carefully, with no expression of disgust or impatience. And then he said to the rest of the Sangha, "If you do not care for the sick, you do not care for me." He wasn't teaching just medicine. He was teaching the very structure of compassion, that we are never separate, that your suffering is not just your own, that my peace affects you, that the way we speak, breathe, listen, and love these things shape the space between us, and what lives between us is sacred. When you begin to see others not as burdens, not as puzzles to solve, but simply as beings like you with fears and longings, then something in you begins to melt. You no longer need them to behave a certain way before you care. You no longer wait for them to apologize before you forgive. You no longer keep score of who gave more. You simply flow. You simply give, because you are filled with something that cannot be depleted. This is not weakness. It is the greatest strength you can carry in this noisy world. Because when you carry this kind of compassion, you no longer feel threatened by difference. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to prove your worth. You walk quietly, and your presence brings ease, like a soft rain that falls on every rooftop without asking who lives inside. That's what your compassion can be. Even tonight, as you lie there listening, you may think, what difference can I make? And I say your willingness to remain soft in a world that often encourages hardness is already changing the world. You don't need to stand on a stage. You don't need to fix everything. You just need to remain open. You might say, in your heart, I am part of something greater than myself. My compassion is not mine alone. It moves through me into the world. I do not need to guard it. I only need to let it flow. Let those words rest in you, and notice something has already softened. Perhaps your breath is slower now. Perhaps your eyes feel heavier. Perhaps your heart feels not smaller from giving, but larger. This is the quiet power of compassion. It asks for no reward. It seeks no title. It simply is, moving silently in the space between you and the world. Not yours, not mine, but ours. A soft answer can change the shape of a moment. You've probably felt this yourself. You were on edge, tired, tense, maybe ready to argue, and someone, instead of matching your energy, replied with something gentle, soft, not dismissive, not condescending, just quiet and calm. And suddenly, everything shifted. The fire in your chest dimmed. Your words slowed. You remembered something more important than being right. That's the sound of compassion. In a noisy world, harshness is contagious. Voices rise, defensiveness spreads, and in that chaos, something as simple as a soft answer becomes revolutionary. The Buddha once said that a kind word is like a balm for the wound of the heart, not because it solves every problem, but because it reminds the person in pain that they are still seen, still human, still worth speaking softly to. Tonight, as we continue walking through the still path of compassion, let's pause here on this small but powerful act, the sound of a soft answer. Not a clever answer, not even a wise one, just soft. There's no need to preach, no need to control. Sometimes you meet someone in their moment of frustration and you say something like, I hear you. Or simply, that sounds difficult. You don't add advice. You don't try to reframe it. You let the softness carry your care. This is not weakness. It takes great strength to remain soft when others are sharp. It takes restraint awareness and deep compassion. Because when someone is caught in their own suffering, they often lash out. Not because they hate you, but because they don't know what else to do with the pain inside them. And if you can be the one to soften the moment, not to win, but to care, you become a refuge. The world does not teach us this. It teaches us to protect our pride, to respond quickly, to match energy, to not let ourselves be walked over. But the Dharma whispers a different way. Let the sharp edge stop with you. Not because you're surrendering, but because you're transforming. When someone throws a stone into a lake, the ripples eventually fade. But if you throw another, and another, the surface remains disturbed. Compassion is choosing not to throw another stone. You let the water settle. You let your own voice be the stillness that others can feel. There's a story from the Buddhist texts, a monk named Puna, who asks the Buddha for permission to teach the Dharma in a violent region. The Buddha concerned asks, "What will you do if the people there insult you?" Puna replies, "I will think they are still better than those who strike." The Buddha asks, "What if they beat you?" Puna replies, "Then they are still better than those who kill." The Buddha asks, "And what if they kill you?" Puna bows his head and says, "Then I will think I have been released from this body with no anger in my heart." This is not a story about tolerating abuse. It's a story about a heart so deeply rooted in compassion that nothing can disturb its peace. Of course, you and I, we are not Puna. We're not enlightened. We feel hurt. We want to defend. We sometimes react. But still, the teaching remains. If you can bring even one soft answer into a day filled with tension, you change the current. You may not see it. The other person may not thank you. But something shifts. Something settles. And you become like a tree that offers shade even to the hand that once broke a branch. So tonight, as your breath slows and your body sinks further into the stillness, consider this. You don't have to say much to offer healing. Sometimes, just being present is enough. Sometimes just saying "I understand" is enough. Sometimes, even just breathing deeply instead of reacting is more than enough. You carry the power to soften the world around you, even in the way you speak, even in the way you listen, even in the silences you choose to honor. Let your next breath be soft. Let your heart remain open. And let your compassion speak, maybe not through loud declarations, but through the gentleness of your presence. Like a single candle in a dark room, a soft answer does not demand to be seen. It simply is. And in that quiet glow, others begin to remember their own light too. There are things in this life that you cannot fix. You will meet people whose grief cannot be soothed by words. You will witness suffering that you have no remedy for. You will hold hands that tremble with pain you can't touch. And in those moments, you might feel helpless, but I want you to know your presence, your willingness to stay your quiet care. Those are not small things. Sometimes the deepest compassion is simply carrying what cannot be fixed. There is a strength in bearing witness. A quiet, unwavering strength that says, "I see your pain. I do not look away. I am not trying to make it disappear. I am just here." This goes against so much of what we're taught, that we must always do, always solve, always make better. But compassion at its core is not about control. It's about surrender. It's about entering the sacred space of someone else's suffering and choosing not to fill it with noise, not to rush it, not to wrap it in cheerful words or spiritual platitudes, but to let it be and to remain. There is a story simple but powerful. A woman once came to the Buddha carrying her lifeless child in her arms. Her eyes were wide, desperate. She begged him to bring the child back to life. And instead of denying her or offering explanation, he said, "Go to every house in the village. Ask them for a single mustard seed from a home where no one has ever known death." She ran from door to door. But of course, every family had known loss. Every heart had been broken in its own way. And slowly, quietly, she began to understand. Grief cannot be fixed, but it can be shared. And in sharing, something softens. This is the compassion of carrying what cannot be healed. Not as a savior, not as a fixer, but as a companion. You have this ability too. When someone near you is hurting, you don't need the right words. You don't need to perform wisdom. You can simply stay. You can offer your breath, your silence, your steady presence. That alone is more healing than we often realize. Because in that act, you're saying you are not alone. Your pain does not scare me. I am willing to be here, even if I can't make it better. And that is love in its most honest form. There may come a night, maybe it's tonight, where you are the one in need of that presence. Maybe no one knows what you're carrying. Maybe your sorrow has no name. Maybe the tiredness has woven itself into your bones. If so, I want to say this gently. Your pain doesn't need to be explained. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to rush to move through it. It is enough that you are here, still breathing, still listening, and I am with you. The Buddha once said, as a mother protects her child, her only child, with her life, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. That boundless heart includes you, your own sorrow, your own unmet hopes, your own silent tears. So tonight, as you lie here, let yourself rest, not in perfection, but in presence. You might place a hand over your heart and say, I am holding what cannot be fixed. I am not alone. I am still worthy of peace. You do not need to be healed to be held. You do not need to be whole to be holy. You are already wrapped in a web of compassion older than memory, a thread that connects you to every being who has ever known loss and loved anyway. Breathe into that. You are carrying something heavy, but you do not have to carry it alone. And even if no one else knows, the weight you bear, this moment honors it. This moment sees it. This moment holds it with you. Let that be your refuge. Let that be enough for now. A candle loses nothing by lighting another flame. That is how compassion works. Quietly, generously, without depletion. You give warmth and somehow you remain warm. You offer light and somehow your own light grows brighter. It's not a transaction, it's a kind of grace. In a noisy world that insists everything must be earned, that kindness must be reserved, that energy must be protected with walls and calculations, the image of the candle teaches us otherwise. It reminds us that giving does not always take away. There's a beauty in this because it shows that compassion doesn't run out. It renews itself each time it flows freely. You've likely seen it before. Someone held the door open for a stranger, and that stranger smiled, and then passed that same gesture forward to someone else. A word of encouragement whispered in the dark spreads across a room without even being noticed. One flame touches another, and another, until the room glows. But the candle never demanded credit. It simply gave and kept burning. The Buddha taught that generosity, Dana, is the first of the perfections, not because it is grand or impressive, but because it unlocks the heart. It invites openness. It softens the edges of fear, and compassion is a form of giving. It is the offering of your attention, your silence, your softness in a hard moment. You might not always be able to give time or money or solutions, but you can give warmth. You can light the candle of someone else's spirit when their wick is trembling. And in that act, you will find you've also lit your own again. This is how the Bodhisattvas move through the world. They give without expecting. They serve without pride. They become sources of light, not because they seek admiration, but because it is simply their nature to burn gently. You don't need to be extraordinary to do this. You just need to notice. Is someone near you weary tonight? Are you the one whose light is dimming? Breathe slowly. You don't need to blaze. You don't need to shine for everyone. You just need to stay lit. Even a flickering candle can illuminate a room. You might reflect on this now. My compassion does not reduce me. When I give gently, I grow stronger. I am willing to light the way, even quietly. There's no need to broadcast your light. The night will notice. Let the warmth of your own flame settle now in your chest. Not hot, not bright, just enough to feel alive. Let it warm the memories of those you love. Let it soften your thoughts toward those you struggle with. Let it rise like incense in the quiet corners of your heart. There's something deeply human about this gesture. To give without knowing if it will be received. To offer without needing thanks. To be the candle that lights another and walks away. That is the heart of the Dharma. Not the doctrine, not the form, but the lived expression of care moment by moment, breath by breath. So tonight, as the sounds of the world soften and your breath slows, remember, you are a candle in the darkness. You don't need to know how many you've touched. You don't need to measure the light you've shared. It is enough that you burn gently, and that your presence helps someone else find their way. Before the first word is spoken, compassion has already arrived. It lives in the silence, in the pause before the reply, in the breath you take before choosing how to respond. We often think that compassion must be expressed in words, that we must say the right thing, offer the right phrase, provide the perfect comfort. But the deepest compassion is often felt before a sound is made. It's in the way your eyes soften when you see someone in pain, the way you lean just slightly towards someone who feels lost, the way your hand rests calmly in your lap when someone next to you is trembling. Compassion is not always something you do. Sometimes it's something you are. And when you rest in that space before speech, before action, you begin to understand its quiet power. The Buddha knew the weight of silence. He would often pause before answering a question, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he was listening deeply, not only to the words, but to the heart beneath the question. That silence was itself an offering. It told the person you are heard, you are felt. I am not rushing to speak over your pain. What would it be like if we offered that same space to others, to ourselves? Imagine sitting with your own suffering, not trying to explain it, not trying to justify it, not even trying to fix it, but simply holding it in that tender silence, letting it breathe, letting it be. There is something sacred in that, because before we speak, we are still raw, still open, and it is in that openness that compassion can enter without resistance. Once a monk approached the Buddha, overwhelmed by shame. He knelt expecting scolding or correction. But the Buddha remained silent for a long moment, simply placing his hand on the monk's shoulder. Nothing was said, and yet the monk wept, because he felt something deeper than words. He felt seen. Tonight you don't need to say anything wise. You don't need to resolve anything lingering in your day. You only need to return to that space before the first word, that gentle breath-held stillness. Their compassion is already awake. Sometimes when someone we love is hurting, we feel pressure to fill the air, to make them feel better, to provide the right comfort. But often, what they need most is your quiet presence. The feeling that you are with them, not trying to pull them out of their sadness too quickly. A simple hand resting beside theirs. A breath shared in the stillness. A gaze that says, I am not going anywhere. You can offer this kind of compassion even when words fail. And you can receive it too. The next time you feel broken, overwhelmed, lost, pause. Before the thoughts rush in, before the story takes shape, before the voice in your head tries to explain or criticize, just sit with yourself. Place a gentle hand over your chest and say nothing. Let the compassion arise before the first word. You might breathe into that silence now. Feel how it holds you, how it opens space, how it soothes without trying to change. This is the compassion that arises from stillness, not as an effort, but as a natural response, a quiet blooming of the heart. You may not remember all the words ever spoken to you, but you will remember the moments when someone sat with you in silence and made you feel safe. That is compassion too. So tonight, as you settle deeper into the dark, into the quiet, into your breath, let this truth accompany you. Even when you do not know what to say, you can still offer love. Even when you are silent, you are not empty. Before the first word, there is already tenderness, and it is enough. To walk in another's shoes, even for a moment, is to open the door to compassion. But more than imagining, we begin by simply feeling what it might be like to carry their weariness, to wake with their doubts, to move through the world with their quiet ache. Not analyzing, not assuming, just softening toward their experience. This is where compassion deepens, because it asks more than sympathy. It asks for presence without judgment. You might think now of someone you've struggled to understand, someone whose actions confused you, someone whose words stirred discomfort or pain. And instead of building a story about them, what if you paused? What if you asked gently, what might their morning have been like? Who did they lose that they've never spoken of? What do they carry in silence each day, not to excuse harm, not to erase accountability, but to widen the lens, to hold more than one truth at once? That is the invitation of compassion, to see beyond the surface, to walk slowly, softly into another's path, not to rescue, but to recognize. There's a teaching in the Buddhist tradition about Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, who hears the cries of the world. She listens not with ears alone, but with her entire being. She doesn't rush to speak. She absorbs the sound of suffering, and in doing so, she becomes the refuge. You too can listen in this way. You don't need to understand everything to hold someone with care. Sometimes it's enough to say, I may never know exactly how this feels, but I see you. I believe you. I'm still here. That changes more than you realize. There's a tenderness in this kind of seeing. A child once came to the Buddha crying not from pain, but from shame. He had broken a pot and been scolded. The Buddha sat beside him, not saying a word. Then slowly, he began to gather the broken shards, and with gentle hands, stacked them like petals in a bowl. Nothing is ever truly gone, he said, only changed. The child stopped crying, because he had been seen not as a mistake, but as a being still becoming. When we walk in another's shoes, we loosen our grip on judgment. We let go of categories, good, bad, deserving, undeserving. We see just a being imperfect, trying, feeling, stumbling, like us. And then we realize compassion doesn't mean condoning. It doesn't mean losing boundaries. It means remembering that suffering lives in all of us, and none of us are beyond the need for kindness. Even now, someone near you is carrying a silent burden. You may never know what it is, but you can still soften your eyes when they pass. You can still speak gently when they hesitate. You can still offer warmth where there is coldness. And if you find it hard to do, if your own pain is too loud, then begin with yourself. Put on your own shoes. Walk through your own day and say, I did the best I could. That is compassion too. Because when you begin to treat yourself with the tenderness you crave, something remarkable happens. you begin to naturally extend that same tenderness to others, not from effort, but from recognition. We are not so different, you whisper, and your heart opens. Tonight, as you rest, you might breathe into that shared humanity. Think of the countless others across the world also lying down, also seeking peace, also nursing their own quiet aches. Let that awareness cradle you. You are not alone. You never were, and neither are they. So we keep walking softly, humbly in one another's shoes, not to fix, not to compare, but to remember. We are all travelers here, each carrying unseen stories, each worthy of a little more gentleness. Compassion doesn't always look like reaching out. Sometimes it's in the quiet choice to hold back, to pause, to breathe, to not react, to allow space for calm where anger wants to grow. This is the compassion of restraint. In moments of conflict, we often think we need to say something, defend, correct, explain, justify. We feel the tension rise like a tide, and our instinct is to push back to make our position clear, to claim space. But the Buddha taught that one who holds the power to strike and does not strike, one who can speak and chooses silence, has discovered the deeper freedom. This is not repression. This is wisdom meeting compassion. When you choose not to return a sharp word, not out of fear, but out of clarity, you become like a tree that stands still in a storm. The branches may sway, but the roots hold firm. And in your stillness, something powerful happens. The cycle of harm is interrupted. You might think now of a moment where someone provoked you, a misunderstanding, a sharp glance, a careless comment. You wanted to reply, to defend your name, to make them see. But instead, you paused. You took a breath. You allowed the moment to pass, unamplified. That's not weakness. That's strength clothed in silence. It is not always easy. Restraint requires presence. It requires noticing the urge, the tightening in your chest, the pressure in your jaw, and letting it move through without grabbing onto it. It requires kindness toward yourself too. Because even when you do react, when the words slip out too fast, when the door closes too hard, you can still return, still breathe, still soften. You're allowed to begin again. That too is compassion. The Buddha's cousin Devadatta tried many times to harm him out of jealousy, out of confusion. And yet the Buddha never struck back, never cursed his name. He simply continued walking the path, steady and unwavering. He understood the only true protection is peace of heart, and the only real victory is compassion preserved. You can carry that same truth. When you feel the heat rising, you might say to yourself, I am not required to respond with pain. I have space within me for pause. I choose peace not to avoid, but to heal. These simple words are like cool water poured on smoldering embers. Because restraint doesn't mean you disappear. It means you appear more fully calm, present, anchored. And from that place, when words do come, they come from clarity, from love, from a desire not to win, but to connect. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is to let a moment pass unspoken. To be the quiet that allows both hearts to breathe again. And when someone next to you is spiraling, when their own hurt lashes outward, you can be the stillness that reminds them of a gentler way, even when it's not returned, even when it goes unnoticed. Your restraint is not for show. It's a sacred act. It's how you protect the garden of your heart from weeds of anger. Tonight, as you lie still, you might remember one such moment. Not to judge yourself, but to honor the courage it took to remain soft. or to see where you might choose differently next time. This path is not about perfection. It's about returning again and again to what matters. So breathe now. Let go of the need to prove. Let go of the last thing someone said. Let go of what you didn't say and wish you had. You are allowed to rest. And in your rest, your compassion deepens not in effort, but in presence. Let restraint become a refuge, not silence as avoidance, but silence as grace. One breath of mercy can change everything. Not a grand gesture, not a mighty vow, just one quiet breath taken with the intention to soften, to stay open to care. That is the beginning of compassion. You may not feel ready to change the world. You may not feel like you have much to give. But in this very moment, if you can take one breath with mercy in your heart for yourself, for another, that is more than enough. It's like lighting a lantern in a dark room. No need to chase shadows. The light simply begins to glow. In Buddhist practice, the breath is more than just air. It is a bridge between the body and the heart, between effort and ease. When you breathe with awareness, you return to this moment. And when you breathe with compassion, you offer sanctuary to whatever this moment holds. A monk once asked the Buddha, "What is the most basic form of compassion I can offer when I have nothing else to give?" And the Buddha replied, "Offer the breath that brings peace, even if only to yourself." That's where it begins. A breath taken instead of a reaction. A breath taken before a harsh word. A breath taken when tears come too quickly. This breath, right here, it is already a gift. It tells the body you are safe. It tells the mind you do not need to hurry. It tells the heart you are still whole. And from that space of quiet mercy, you can begin to extend that same message outward to the person who wronged you, to the stranger who brushed past you, to the loved one who doesn't know how to say sorry. You may not speak it aloud, but your breath carries it. The pause between heartbeats holds it. That gentle, invisible offering. One breath of mercy. You can give it without being noticed. You can give it even when no one seems to deserve it. You can give it even when you feel depleted. Because this is the breath that restores you too. There is a simple practice in many Buddhist traditions. When feeling overwhelmed, bring your awareness gently to the inhale and imagine breathing in compassion for yourself. On the exhale, offer compassion outward to the one who is suffering or to the whole world. It is a silent act of love. Inhale, may I be at peace. Exhale, may all beings be at peace. No one hears you. No one needs to. But the world feels it. Because compassion is not only in our actions, it is in the quality of our presence. Even when you do nothing, your breath can become a blessing. Tonight, you may want to try this. As you inhale, say gently in your mind, "I receive mercy." As you exhale, say softly, "I offer mercy." Do this slowly, without effort, without expectation. Let it carry you deeper into stillness. Let it wrap the moments of your day that still ache. Let it touch the memory of someone you're not ready to forgive. Let it rest gently in the corners of your body that are tired. And know this one breath of mercy may be the very thing someone else needed, even if they never know you offered it. Even if the only heart that heals is your own, that is more than enough. The world is noisy, but this breath is quiet. And in its quiet, it says, "What words cannot, I will not close. I will not harden. I will stay." This breath, right here, this is compassion. There is a kind of giving that no one sees. No applause, no thank you, no echo. It is the invisible offering. You make it in the quiet. in the margins, in moments where no one is watching and no one will know. And still, you give. That is the essence of pure compassion. Because true compassion doesn't seek recognition. It doesn't count. It doesn't record. It simply flows because the heart cannot help but offer what it has received. The Buddha once told his disciples, "A gift given in secret with no expectation carries 10 times the merit of one given with fanfare." Why? Because it's free. Free of ego. Free of image. Free of calculation. It becomes a reflection of the boundless heart, not a performance. You may know this kind of giving well. You've comforted someone with a quiet presence when others turned away. You've prayed for someone you no longer speak to. You've let someone have the last word in a moment that could have escalated. You've taken a deep breath, so your next word would be gentle. No one knew. But the act was real. These are the invisible offerings that nourish the world. They live in the spaces between praise. They exist in the soft corners of time. And while no one may notice, you do. Your heart remembers. Your breath remembers. And something inside you feels lighter for having given. This is why the Buddha emphasized intention over outcome. A gift is not measured by its size or by the reaction it receives. It is measured by the openness of the heart that gives it. A single kind thought offered silently can be more powerful than 1,000 spoken compliments. Tonight, as you rest, reflect on this. You have offered more than you realize. Your gentle thoughts, your silent prayers, your restrained reactions, your unnoticed presence in moments of quiet need. Each of these is a seed, planted in the field of karma. And while the world may not see it grow, something inside you is already blooming. This path of invisible offering is not about denying yourself or giving until you're empty. It's about giving from a full place, a place that knows the joy of flowing without obstruction. You give not because you are lesser. You give because you are abundant. And this kind of giving does not leave you hollow. It strengthens you, softly, quietly, like muscles formed through daily acts of grace. Sometimes someone will ask, "But what if no one ever appreciates what I've done?" And the answer, though simple, is deep. Then your gift was truly pure, because the point was never to be seen. The point was to love. This is the way of the Bodhisattva. To walk through the world offering blessings others will never trace back to you. To soften suffering that will never have your name attached. To be content with the knowing, I did what I could with kindness. That is enough. So tonight, let your heart remember the invisible offerings you've made. Forgiveness unspoken. Generosity without spotlight. Compassion that never made it to words. You are not unseen. The Dharma sees. The path remembers. Your own heart carries the record. And in that quiet ledger, you are wealthy beyond measure. Breathe into that. Feel the goodness of your own unseen kindness. Feel how it lives in you still. Not as pride, but as peace. This is compassion at its most refined. Not yours, not theirs, but love, moving freely without needing to be held. Let that be your pillow tonight. Let that be your rest. Even the stone listens. The earth beneath your feet, the one you walk across without thinking, absorbs more than just footsteps. It receives. It remembers. It bears the weight of our sorrows with silent patience. So too does the compassionate heart. A heart that listens doesn't rush. It doesn't try to fix. It simply receives. Tonight we rest in that listening. Not with ears, but with the still, steady openness of being. There is a teaching in Buddhism known as deep listening, not just to words, but to what lies beneath them. It is a listening that hears not only the speaker, but the silence around them, the tremble in the breath, the hesitation before a word, the truth that hides in pauses. And just like the stone, we are asked to listen, not to react, but to hold, to be a space where another can unfold, even if imperfectly. You've probably felt this once before, when someone listened to you without interruption, without advice, without glancing at their phone. And in that moment, you relaxed, because you felt heard. That kind of listening is rare, and yet it's available to us every day. When a child stammers out their feelings, when a friend struggles to name their sadness, when a stranger rants not to you, but near you, you can listen not with judgment, but with your whole being. And when you do something incredible happens, the other begins to soften. Not because you offered a solution, but because your presence said, "You matter." That is compassion. Even when it seems like there's nothing to say, nothing to do. No clear help to offer, your listening becomes the medicine. Because to be heard is to be validated. And to be validated is to remember, I am not invisible. The Buddha in many sutras listened more than he spoke. He waited. He let people speak their confusion, their sorrow, their anger. And only when the silence ripened did he respond with clarity, never haste. There was one story of a farmer whose crops had failed. Angry and hopeless, he came to the Buddha and shouted. His voice was full of bitterness, and the Buddha said nothing. He just looked into the man's eyes with gentleness. Eventually, the farmer stopped shouting. Then, with a voice like water, the Buddha said, I cannot control the rain, but I can help you carry the weight of what you feel. That's what deep listening offers, not solutions, but shared presence. It says, I won't turn away. Tonight you can offer this same space, not necessarily to others, but to yourself. Can you listen to your own weariness? Can you hear the unspoken parts of you, the ones that ache or doubt or long to be held, not to fix, not to diagnose, just to be with? This too is compassion. You don't need to silence those parts of yourself. You don't need to justify or explain them. Just let them speak quietly in the space of your breath. Imagine the stone again. It doesn't argue with the rain. It doesn't demand the wind be softer. It simply receives. And in doing so, it becomes strong, not through resistance, but through presence. You can be that presence. You can rest tonight knowing that you don't need all the answers. That listening is enough. You might say softly within, I am willing to listen even to what hurts. I will hold space without rushing to fill it. My heart can be still, like the earth beneath me. And in that stillness, something profound awakens. Not resolution, but compassion. Not perfection, but peace. So lie back now. Let the stone of your breath settle. Let the noise fade. Let what has been unsaid begin to be heard. You are the listener. You are the held. And in the quiet, you are whole. There is great kindness in not needing to know, in the spaciousness of not having an answer, in the humility of sitting with mystery, in the compassion of allowing someone's story to unfold without rushing in to define it. This is the kindness of not knowing. We often think that to love someone we must understand them completely, that to offer real support we need the full picture. That clarity is a prerequisite for care. But the deeper compassion asks for something else, the willingness to stay even in uncertainty. To say, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I'm still here. That is powerful, because true listening is not about gathering information. It's about offering presence. And sometimes when we try too hard to understand, we end up boxing others and trapping them in our version of their story. But when we let go of needing to grasp, needing to define, needing to interpret, we create space. And in that space, love breathes freely. There's a Zen saying, not knowing is most intimate. And it's true. When you allow someone to be a mystery, and you love them anyway, without trying to solve them, without needing to name every feeling, they feel safe. They feel accepted. You might remember a moment in your own life when someone did this for you. When you were confused, or ashamed, or grieving, but they didn't press for details. They didn't demand clarity. They just stayed. And you felt a quiet sense of relief, because their presence said, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to make it make sense. That is compassion, to offer sanctuary in the unknown. The Buddha's teachings are filled with this gentle approach. He never rushed others to awaken. He never insisted they understand before they were ready. He simply planted seeds, offered guidance, and trusted the unfolding. And when asked questions designed to trap him, clever debates, philosophical dilemmas, he often remained silent. Not because he didn't know, but because he saw that silence was kinder than answers that closed the heart. This doesn't mean we stop learning. It doesn't mean we avoid knowledge. But it means we hold knowledge gently, never as a weapon, never as a wall. And when someone comes to us in pain, we don't say, I know exactly what you're going through. Because we don't. And we don't need to. Compassion begins when we allow ourselves to be humble. To sit beside someone and admit I don't have the answers, but I'm not leaving. That is intimacy. That is trust. That is love without conditions. Tonight, as you rest, you might breathe into your own not knowing. What if you didn't need to solve everything tonight? What if you let the questions stay open? What if you allowed yourself to be held by the mystery? There is wisdom in that. There is peace in that. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are simply unfolding like all beings. And as you lie here, you might whisper to yourself, it's okay not to know. I trust the process of becoming. I offer compassion even in uncertainty. Let those words settle into your breath. Let them ease the mind's need to grip. Let them soften the urge to figure it all out. Because tonight, you don't need to explain anything, not to yourself, not to anyone else. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a presence to be honored. And in your not knowing, you are still worthy of compassion, still whole, still home. To see with gentle eyes is to see the world as it is, imperfect, tender, hurting, and yet still beautiful. In a harsh world, compassion begins with how you look, not just with your eyes, but with your intention, with your willingness to see past the sharpness, to look beyond judgment, to recognize vulnerability beneath even the hardest faces. This is the gift of gentle seeing, not naive, not blind, but open. When the Buddha looked upon people, criminals, outcasts, warriors, kings, he didn't look at what they had done. He looked at what they still could become, not through imagination, but through insight into their nature. He saw the suffering beneath their actions, the delusion beneath their anger, the fear behind their pride. And because he could see clearly, he could love deeply. You have this same capacity. Every day you pass by people wearing masks, not the ones we choose, but the ones built from wounds. Some wear anger to hide sadness. Others wear indifference to protect from rejection. And some wear smiles just to get through the day. When you meet someone like that, try this. Soften your gaze. Pause before making a conclusion. Ask yourself, not what's wrong with them, but what pain might they be carrying. This is not about excusing harmful behavior. It's about refusing to become hardened yourself. The world doesn't need more sharp eyes. It needs more gentle ones. Eyes that look with patience. Eyes that wait for the soul behind the struggle to show itself. There's a story in the sutras of a man who shouted at the Buddha during a gathering. His voice was full of anger, challenging the Dharma. The crowd expected the Buddha to respond with firmness or rebuke, but he didn't. He simply looked at the man, not with scorn, not with fear, but with stillness and compassion. The man eventually stopped shouting, not because he lost the argument, but because something in the Buddha's gaze disarmed his pain. He was no longer seen as an enemy. He was seen as a being. And in that moment, he remembered his own softness. That is the quiet power of seeing with gentle eyes. You don't need to understand someone to treat them with kindness. You don't need to agree with them to recognize their humanity. And when you choose to soften your gaze, even just for a breath, you invite healing into the space between you. Tonight, think of someone who's been difficult for you. Don't relive the conflict. Don't analyze the past. Just imagine looking at them, not with your mind, but with your heart. See them not as their role or their mistake, but as a being in the middle of a long journey, just like you. You might say inwardly, I see your pain. I see the part of you that still longs to be free. I choose to look gently. This kind of seeing transforms you. It relaxes the face. It softens the breath. It opens the space between thought and reaction. And it reminds you that every person you meet is carrying a story you'll never fully know, including yourself. So when you look in the mirror, do the same. Don't search for flaws. Don't critique your weariness. Just look gently and say, I see someone trying. I see someone who deserves to be loved. I see someone worth forgiving. Let your eyes rest now. Let the tension behind them melt. Let your heart take over the seeing. For tonight, nothing more is needed than this to see with love, to see with mercy, to see and still remain soft. Even the smallest hands can carry a big heart. Sometimes we believe compassion must be large, loud, visible, grand. But the Dharma teaches something quieter, that even the most ordinary gesture when offered with sincerity holds immeasurable value. A warm glance, a steady hand, a quiet I'm here. These are not small things. They are the threads that mend broken spirits, the roots of peace, the unseen kindnesses that keep the world from falling apart. You might think now of someone in your life who showed you compassion, not through speeches, not through big promises, but through tiny acts. Maybe they brought you tea when you didn't ask. Maybe they waited with you saying nothing. Maybe they forgave you before you even said sorry. It was small, but it meant everything. Because the heart behind the act was whole. The Buddha said, drop by drop, the water jar is filled. In the same way, every small act of compassion fills the jar of your life. You may not see it overflowing yet, but it is filling. Quietly, surely. In a world hungry for recognition, it takes courage to offer unseen love. It takes humility to be the one who carries joy without needing credit. But you do it. You carry meals to your elders. You send kind messages that no one notices. You share silence with someone who's grieving. You choose to be gentle when your own heart is tired. And these are the most profound forms of compassion. Because they're not performed, they're lived. You don't have to be perfect to offer something good. You don't have to have answers to offer comfort. You just need to be willing. A bodhisattva doesn't wait to be powerful. They serve from where they are, with what they have exactly as they are. That's the real strength. A child offering their toy to another who is crying, this is compassion. An elder letting someone younger go first, this is compassion. You turning towards someone instead of away, this is compassion. No act is too small if it comes from the heart. Tonight, as you rest, let yourself remember the compassion you've already given. Don't dismiss it just because it was quiet. Don't minimize it because no one clapped. Let it rise in your memory like soft lanterns glowing. All the times you stayed when it was easier to walk away. All the times you softened when you could have snapped. All the times you gave not from abundance, but from love. You might say gently now, my small acts carry great love. I offer what I can with a full heart. I do not need to be seen to be true. Let those words wrap you like a warm blanket, because you've already done more than enough. You've already brought light into someone's world, perhaps without knowing it, and tomorrow you'll do it again, with your small hands and your boundless heart. Between two heartbeats, a space exists, quiet, barely noticeable, but within it the entire universe breathes. That space, soft, unspoken, still is where compassion often begins. Not in action, not in speech, but in the pause, the space between reaction and response, the space between feeling and choosing, the space between two heartbeats. We often rush through our days, through our thoughts, through our emotions. We go from one thing to the next, barely noticing the transitions. But the Dharma invites us to slow down, not to the point of delay, but to the rhythm of awareness. Because in that rhythm, compassion blooms. When someone speaks harshly to you, there is a choice point between hearing their words and responding with your own. It's a narrow moment, but it's there. In that small breath of space, you can decide, do I repeat the harm or do I offer stillness? The Buddha taught that in every moment we are born again. And that rebirth doesn't always mean a new lifetime. It can be as simple and as sacred as choosing differently in the space between heartbeats. You feel anger rise. You breathe. You choose to remain soft. That is rebirth. That is compassion. This space exists in every part of life. When you walk, it's in the rhythm of your footsteps, the moment your foot lifts before it lands. When you speak, it's in the pause before the next word. When you listen, it's in the stillness between their breath and yours. And when you love, it's in the space between offering and receiving. These small, sacred pauses are not empty. They are full of presence, of choice, of grace. You might think of them as doorways, and compassion is the one who walks through gently. A mother watches her child fall. Her instinct is to rush, but in the pause, she softens. She sees the child learning, not failing. She waits, arms open, not to rescue, but to receive. A friend hears a painful truth. Their instinct is to defend, but in the pause, they breathe. They say, "Thank you for telling me." A stranger holds the door. The other doesn't say thank you. In the pause, resentment flickers, but instead of frowning, the stranger smiles and moves on. These moments are small, but they shape who we are, and they shape the world around us. You may not remember them all, but your heart does, and it grows each time you choose compassion in that quiet interval. Tonight, you can practice this even now. As you breathe in, notice the space before the breath turns. As you breathe out, notice the stillness at the bottom. These pauses are not nothing. They are everything. They are where choice lives. You might whisper within, in the space between I return to myself. I am free to choose softness. Each heartbeat is an invitation to love. Let those words move with your breath. Let them settle into the silent rhythm of your body. Let them remind you that you are never without a doorway to peace. No matter what happened today, no matter what waits tomorrow. Right now, between heartbeats, you are held. You are enough. You are love. And in the sacred space between this breath and the next, compassion is already on its way. Sometimes the most powerful compassion is completely wordless. It doesn't come in the form of advice or prayer or even comfort. It simply is, present, quiet, deep like still water. This is the silence of the Bodhisattva. Not silence as withdrawal, not silence as avoidance, but silence as presence. The kind of silence that listens with the whole being. The kind of silence that surrounds someone's sorrow without suffocating it. The kind of silence that says, you don't have to explain. I am here. In the Buddhist path, the Bodhisattva is not a figure of loud gestures or declarations. Often they appear in the background, gentle, attuned, listening to the cries of the world, but not shouting over them. They do not always speak. They do not always act. They wait. And in that waiting, there is profound compassion, because not all pain needs a response. Sometimes it just needs someone who will remain. You may have sat beside someone once, perhaps a friend or a stranger, when words failed. You didn't know what to say. Nothing seemed right. So you stayed quiet, but you didn't leave. And your silence became a sanctuary. That was compassion. You may never have been thanked for it. You may have wondered if you did the right thing. But if your silence was filled with presence, not tension, not discomfort, but loving attention, then you gave something sacred. You became the stillness another heart needed. There is a story from the sutras. A man whose wife had died came to the Buddha in despair. Others tried to console him with talk of impermanence, rebirth karma, but nothing touched him. The Buddha sat beside him, said nothing. And after some time, the man began to cry, not with rage, but with release. He said, "You didn't speak, but I felt that you knew." That is the silence of the Bodhisattva. You can carry this silence too. You don't need to explain everything. You don't need to solve every sadness. You only need to remain open heart, still breath steady. In this world, people often fill space with words. We're taught to speak quickly, to respond immediately, to offer something, anything that sounds wise or helpful. But sometimes compassion is simply not interrupting the ache, letting it move, letting it settle, letting someone feel what they feel while knowing they are not alone. And this applies inwardly too. You might feel pain in your own heart tonight, a sorrow with no clear shape, a tiredness that clings to your bones, a longing that won't name itself. Don't rush to interpret it. Don't force it to make sense. Just sit with it in silence. Place a hand gently on your heart and breathe. That is enough. You are not here to fix yourself. You are here to be with yourself, with compassion. And that kind of presence changes everything. The silence of the Bodhisattva is not empty. It is full of listening, of love, of trust in the unfolding. So tonight, let silence surround you. Let it rise like a tide around your body, cradling you. Let it enter the spaces between thoughts. Let it remind you, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are not required to speak or explain or do. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to be held. And even now, somewhere a Bodhisattva is listening without words, just as you are listening now, with silence, with stillness, with love. When two hearts bow together, something wordless passes between them. It is not obligation. It is not performance. It is shared reverence and unspoken understanding that you and I are both human, both fragile, both seeking peace in our own way. This is where compassion deepens, not when it is given from above, but when it is shared from beside. Too often we think of compassion as something we give as if we are full and others are empty, as if we are the strong and they are the weak. But true compassion is not a one-way offering. It is a meeting, a union of hearts that bow not in submission, but in mutual respect. The Buddha taught that the path to awakening is walked together. He did not place himself above others. He bowed to life, to suffering, to mystery, and he invited others to walk with him, not behind him, not beneath him, but beside. That is a radical kind of love. To look into someone's eyes and say silently, "You are not beneath me. You are not broken. You are like me navigating the tides of this world." Imagine what the world would feel like if more people met each other this way. Not with competition, not with labels, not with the need to win or fix or save, but with humility. The bow of compassion says, "I see your humanness. I honor your experience. I'm not here to change you. I'm here to walk beside you." This is what Sangha, the spiritual community, is built upon. Not agreement, not perfection, but shared presence, and it begins in simple ways. You see someone struggling. You don't rush to teach. You simply sit down beside them. You feel anger rising with someone you care for. You breathe instead of blame. You bow inwardly to their suffering, even as you hold your own boundaries. You share silence after loss. You place your hand gently near theirs. You say with your presence, "Me too." When two hearts bow together, the need for solutions disappears. What remains is tenderness. You may have felt this with a friend, a partner, a stranger, a moment where nothing was said, but everything was understood. That moment lives in your memory, not because of what was done, but because of what was felt. Connection, compassion, a softening that required nothing more than being fully there. Tonight as you rest, think of someone you would like to bow with, not physically, but with the heart. It might be someone you love. It might be someone you've struggled with. It might be you. Yes, you. You too deserve the compassion of a gentle bow. Place a hand over your chest and say inwardly, "I honor your journey. I honor your effort. I bow to the being within you that never gave up." You may feel a loosening, a quiet tear, a subtle warmth. Let it be. Let it mean that you have returned to what is real. We are not alone in this world. We are not separate, though we often feel it. We are beings breathing in the same world air, walking different roads, but longing for the same thing: peace, belonging, love. When two hearts bow together, even silently, a bridge is built, not made of words, but of presence. And that bridge may be the path someone walks to find their way home. Perhaps tonight, that someone is you. A cup filled for another is an act of quiet devotion. You pour, not because you have excess, but because you know what thirst feels like. You offer, not because you've solved everything, but because you remember what it means to go without. Compassion often looks like this: holding joy and sorrow for someone else, even when your own hands tremble a little. There is an old tradition in some Buddhist monasteries. When a monk has rice, he sets aside a portion, sometimes the choicest part, for another monk who may be sick, grieving, or silently struggling. No announcement is made. No reward is expected. The bowl is placed gently by the door, and that's all. It's a small act. But behind it is an entire philosophy. I see your need. I remember your humanity. I share what I have, even if I have little. That is a cup filled for another. And you may be offering this kind of compassion already. Maybe you've given your energy to someone who couldn't return it. Maybe you've shared your time with someone who never thanked you. Maybe you've held space for someone who didn't even know they needed it. These moments matter, because when you hold joy for someone else, cheer for them, even when your own heart is aching, that is a powerful form of love. And when you make room for another's grief, without rushing it, without comparing it to your own, you become a vessel of compassion. The Buddha once told a story of a mother bird who shielded her chicks from the rain with her wings, even though she herself was shivering. This, he said, is what it means to give of yourself with no demand. You don't have to be a hero to do this. Sometimes compassion means sending a message even when your day is heavy. Sometimes it means listening to someone's fears even while carrying your own. Sometimes it means offering a smile, not because everything is perfect, but because you want someone else to feel less alone. And sometimes it means holding both their sorrow and your own. That's not being selfless. That's being real. Because in truth, our hearts are not separate containers. When we fill the cup of another, some part of us is nourished too. Not by what we receive in return, but by the knowing I was here. I gave what I could. I cared. And that is enough. Tonight you might recall someone whose cup you helped fill. Not with wealth, not with solutions, but with presence, with laughter, with listening, with staying. Or perhaps you think of someone who filled your cup once quietly, unexpectedly. Someone who believed in you when you couldn't. Someone who carried your sorrow for a little while. Let those memories come. Let them warm you. You might say softly now, I carry joy for others with care. I offer sorrow a place to rest. I pour gently, and what I give returns in peace. Let those words rise and fall with your breath. Let your body feel the ease that comes from not needing to be full to be generous. Compassion is not about waiting until your life is perfect. It's about giving what you can, when you can, with a heart that remembers we all get tired. We all get thirsty. And tonight, someone somewhere may sleep more easily because of something you quietly gave. That's enough. That's everything. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let others be where they are. Not push, not pull, not fix. Just let be. It sounds simple, almost passive. But to let someone be, to truly allow them their path, their pace, their process, is a deep and mature form of compassion. Because it means surrendering your need to shape the moment. It means stepping back from the urge to rescue, correct, or guide someone toward the version of peace you think they need. Instead, you trust. You trust that the seed is there. You trust that the unfolding will happen. And you offer space, not solutions. The Buddha practiced this often. When someone approached him filled with confusion or anger, he didn't always respond with immediate teaching. Sometimes he simply waited. Sometimes he said nothing at all. Sometimes he told a story, planted a question, or walked beside them in silence. Because he understood timing is part of wisdom. A lotus does not bloom because we open its petals. It blooms because the sun rises, and no amount of pulling will make it bloom faster. So too with people. So too with pain. So too with healing. To let someone be where they are is not neglect. It's not indifference. It's a loving acknowledgement. I see you. I trust your path. I do not need to interfere. This kind of compassion requires inner spaciousness, because your heart wants to help. Your mind wants to fix. Your love wants to shield. But there is another kind of love, the quiet love that trusts someone to find their own way. You might have someone in your life right now who's struggling, and maybe you've tried to help. Maybe you've spoken, reached out, guided, or waited, and maybe nothing seems to change. Let that be okay. It's not your job to change them. It's your opportunity to be a steady presence, a witness, a quiet well of care that doesn't close even when things don't go how you hoped. That too is compassion, letting someone move through their darkness without pulling them toward your light. Letting someone rest in their confusion without demanding clarity. Letting someone take the long road without rushing them to your destination. You might say gently, "Now, I can love without controlling. I can care without directing. I can stay and let others be." And perhaps the one who needs that compassion tonight is you. Perhaps there is a part of you that you've been rushing, a wound you've been trying to force closed, a feeling you've tried to escape, a story you've judged as not being healed enough. What would it feel like to just let yourself be? No fixing, no explaining, just a breath, a body, a heart that is enough even as it is. That is a profound kind of peace. Because to let be is to say, you are still on the path. You are still worthy. You are still loved. Even now, even here, especially here. So, tonight, breathe deeply. Let the weight of trying dissolve. Let the need to hurry fall away. Let the world be what it is. Let you be what you are. Everything is already unfolding. Your compassion, your patience, your willingness to let be, these are the waters that carry all things home. Compassion, when it is true, does not choose. It falls like rain on all things, on all beings, without asking who is deserving. This is the gentle truth we explore tonight, that the most awakened heart is not selective. It does not love because of likeness or preference or reward. It loves because it knows everything that breathes longs for peace. The Buddha compared compassion to rain more than once. Soft, steady, impartial. It nourishes the just and the unjust, the kind, and the cruel, the faithful, and the lost. Not because they have earned it, but because they exist. To be is to be worthy of kindness. And this is hard for the human heart, because we are taught to measure, to ask who deserves my time, my energy, my forgiveness. But compassion is not measured. It is offered, and it is strongest when it is given to those who seem furthest from deserving it. Imagine a field of thirsty plants. Would the rain skip over the thorns? Would it hold itself back from the ones that have scratched others? No, it falls, it gives. And through that simple, persistent offering, even the hardest soil begins to soften. You may not always feel like this. There are people in your life who have hurt you. People who have misunderstood, judged, betrayed. Your heart may still feel tight when you think of them, and that's okay. Compassion doesn't demand that you feel love right away. It simply asks, can you withhold harm? Can you pause, even for a breath, and remember that this being too flawed, confused, Afraid is still walking a path, still learning, still made of the same elements as you. Can you send a silent blessing, even if your voice trembles? May they be free from suffering. May they find peace. May they remember who they truly are. This is rain falling where it is needed most. And it is not weakness. It is the most radical act of strength, because it says, I will not be hardened by pain. I will not become what hurt me. I will remain soft, even in the storm. The Bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara, hears all cries, not just the polite ones, not just the grateful ones, all. Even those laced with hatred, even those spoken in silence, even those that sound like anger, but are really fear. To walk the path of compassion is to let your heart become like rain, falling gently on everything. Not because you agree, not because you condone, but because you refuse to close. Tonight, you might call to mind someone difficult, not to judge them, but to remember their humanity. You don't need to reach out. You don't need to re-enter old wounds. Just breathe. And in your heart, let the rain begin to fall. Softly, without fanfare, without expectation. Let it cleanse you too. Let it wash away the weight of bitterness. Let it nourish the part of you that longs to be free not just from others' harm, but from the way harm makes us build walls. You might say gently, my compassion is wide as the sky. My love falls on all like rain. I give freely because giving frees me. And in this moment, lying here still quiet present, you are already practicing that. Let the rain fall. Let the heart open. And let the world receive your kindness, whether it knows it or not. There is wisdom hidden within weeping. Tears are not weakness. They are not failure. They are not a sign that you've lost your way. They are the soul's gentle overflow when the heart can no longer contain its tenderness, its sorrow, its longing. When silence begins to speak through water. And in Buddhism, tears are not to be shunned. They are to be honored. Even the Buddha, serene and awake, was moved to tears. When he saw beings lost and suffering, when he witnessed the vastness of pain in the world, tears came not out of despair, but out of great compassion. Because tears, when seen clearly, are sacred. They are the soft rain of awakening. They show that you feel. They show that you care. And to care deeply is not to be broken. It is to be profoundly alive. You might have cried recently, or maybe the tears live just behind your eyes, waiting for the right moment to fall. Let them. You don't need to hold them in. You don't need to apologize for them. You don't need to explain them. Each tear holds a truth that words cannot hold. A letting go, a remembering, a quiet prayer that rises not from the mouth, but from the heart. In the sutras, it is said that when Avalokiteshvara, the one who hears the cries of the world, witnessed the depth of suffering, her 1,000 arms grew from each tear that touched the earth. Each tear became an extension of compassion. So when your own tears fall, know this: they are not wasted. They nourish something invisible. They open a channel where the ego softens and something larger flows through. You may cry for yourself. You may cry for someone else. You may cry without knowing why. That's okay. Sometimes the tears come before the understanding. Sometimes the tears are the understanding. And when you witness another in their tears, the deepest compassion is not to stop them, but to sit quietly nearby. To offer the silence in which those tears can fall safely. You don't need to say much, maybe nothing at all. Just your presence, unafraid, unhurried, undemanding, is more healing than any words. Tonight, If your heart is full, if your throat is tight, if emotion stirs beneath the surface, let it rise. Let it move through you. Let it say what it needs to say, even if it has no name. This is the wisdom of weeping, that in each tear something false is released, and something true is born. A new softness, a deeper surrender, a clearer view. You might whisper gently now, "My tears are holy. My pain is not a problem. It is a passage. Through this softness, I become more fully myself." Let those words settle like dew. Let your breath be your cradle. Let the space around you hold what you no longer need to carry alone. Because to weep is not to break, it is to open. And every opening is an invitation to love more deeply. Not despite your tears, but because of them. Compassion is not pity. It is not looking down. It is not seeing someone as smaller, weaker, or broken. True compassion looks across, not down. It sees the full being, not just their suffering, but their dignity, their light, their capacity. When we pity, we separate. We say, "You are over there in pain, and I am over here feeling sorry for you." But when we offer compassion, we draw near. We say, "I feel this with you. You are not beneath me. You are my fellow traveler." This distinction is subtle but important. Pity sees weakness. Compassion sees the shared human experience. And when we understand this, our care becomes lighter, truer, and more healing. You've likely experienced both. Perhaps someone once looked at you with pity, their eyes heavy, their voice wrapped in sorrow. And though they may have meant well, it left you feeling smaller, invisible, reduced to your pain. But then maybe someone else simply stood with you. No dramatics, no sorrowful glances, just presence, soft eyes, a calm breath. And in that moment, you felt equal, seen, honored. That was compassion. The Buddha never pitied anyone, not the beggar, not the sick, not the criminal, not the lost. He saw them clearly as beings on the same path, some further along, some just beginning, all capable of awakening. He saw not only their suffering, but their potential, and he spoke to that potential. This is what compassion does. It sees the light in others even when they don't. It holds the mirror steady, not to highlight wounds, but to reflect wholeness. So when you feel compassion rising in your heart, pause and notice, am I trying to lift this person or to stand beside them? The difference matters. Because one builds connection, the other builds distance. You might reflect on someone in your life now, someone who is struggling. You may have tried to help. You may have felt sorrow for them. But tonight, can you shift gently into compassion? Can you hold them as an equal? Not someone to be saved, but someone to be loved exactly as they are. You might say inwardly, "I see your strength. I trust your process. I offer you my heart, not my sorrow." And then return to your breath. Let the body soften. Let the mind rest. Let the heart expand, not with sadness, but with solidarity. We are all walking this path. And sometimes the greatest gift you can offer another is the confidence that they are more than their pain, that they are worthy of love, not because they are struggling, but because they are alive, because they are you in another form. And when you see them clearly, without pity, without judgment, your compassion becomes clear water, still, pure, unclouded by ego. Tonight you are invited into that kind of seeing. No need to fix, no need to mourn. Just be present. Stand beside, and know that your presence equal loving calm is already enough. To walk beside someone, not in front, not behind, not above, is one of the simplest and most profound acts of compassion. When you walk beside someone, you say without words, "I'm not here to lead you. I'm not here to follow you. I'm just here to be with you. And that changes everything. So much of life is shaped by hierarchies. Who knows more? Who's further along? Who's the teacher, the student, the helper, the helped? But real compassion dissolves these roles. It creates a shared field where both hearts are equal. When the Buddha wandered from village to village, he didn't build a throne. He sat on the ground. He ate with others. He walked at their pace. When someone was sick, he didn't delegate, he stayed and cared. When someone confessed their fear, he didn't rise above it, he leaned in. He walked with people not ahead of them. Because he understood suffering equalizes us all, and so does love. To walk beside someone is to acknowledge that we all carry burdens. We all have blind spots. We all get lost, but together we can keep going. This doesn't mean giving up your wisdom or ignoring your clarity. It means offering it humbly, not with, I know what's best, but with, I'll be here while you find your way. That small shift is powerful. It transforms advice into encouragement. It transforms help into partnership. It transforms compassion into companionship. You might think now of someone who once walked beside you, someone who didn't rush you, someone who didn't make you feel less than, someone who saw you in your moment of struggle and said, maybe only with their presence, I'm still here. That person may not have had all the answers, but they made you feel safe. They gave you space to breathe. And that's what you can be for others too. You don't need to rescue anyone. You don't need to drag anyone forward. You don't even need to understand them completely. You just need to stay near, with patience, with warmth, with humility. You might say to yourself now, I do not need to lead. I do not need to follow. I choose to walk beside. And perhaps you need to walk beside yourself too. Not judging your pace, not wishing you were further. Just walking, breath by breath, step by step, with a version of you that's here now. Can you offer that presence to yourself? The same steady companionship? No rush, no pressure, just a gentle whisper. I'm not going anywhere. I'll walk with you. Let that be your practice tonight. As your breath rises and falls, imagine yourself walking down a quiet path shoulder to shoulder with someone, or with the quiet part of you that needs love. No need to speak. No need to plan. Just walk, side by side. Let that be enough. The first step toward compassion is often just listening. Not the kind of listening where you're waiting for your turn to speak. Not the kind where you're already preparing your response, but true deep listening. The kind that says, I am here. I hear you. I will not look away. When the Buddha spoke of compassion, he didn't begin with grand teachings or lofty ideals. He began with presence, with attention, with the soft, deliberate act of being with someone in their experience. Listening, real listening, is healing. Because most people are not truly heard. They are responded to, advised, debated with, but rarely are they simply received. To listen is to make space, to hold open the door of your attention and say, you are safe here. You can be as you are. I will not fix you. I will not rush you. This kind of compassion doesn't need wisdom. It doesn't need training. It simply requires your full presence. You don't need to know the right thing to say. You don't need to solve the problem. You only need to listen with your ears, your heart, your breath. And in that listening, you might find that what wants to be heard is not only someone else, but yourself. You have parts of you waiting to be heard too. A younger self, a grieving self, a quiet voice that hasn't been given room? Can you listen inwardly with the same softness? Can you sit with your own silence? When others spoke to the Buddha, he often waited before replying, not out of hesitation, but out of respect. He let their words land. He let their pain breathe. And then only when the time was ripe did he speak gently, thoughtfully, like placing a cup of tea on a table. We can learn from that. We can let our responses come from stillness, not reflex. And sometimes the most compassionate response is none at all. Just a nod, a breath, a quiet presence that says, "You matter even when there are no words." Tonight, as you settle deeper into rest, you might think of someone you wish to understand better. Instead of imagining what you'd say, imagine what it would feel like to truly listen to them, to set aside your stories, to set aside your conclusions, and to open your heart as if for the first time. You might say inwardly, "I am here to listen. I release the need to respond. I make space for what is," and perhaps turn that same attention toward yourself. Listen to your breath. Listen to your heartbeat. Listen to the quiet behind your thoughts. What does that silence say? What pain is asking to be held? What dream still waits patiently to be named? You don't need to answer tonight. You don't need to rush into knowing. Just listen to the stillness, to the ache, to the hope, to the presence that has always been here, waiting for you to return. Because listening is not passive. It is an offering, a door left open, and you simply by being present are enough. A single touch on the shoulder can carry the weight of 1,000 words. When the heart is heavy, when grief has no language, when sorrow closes the throat, sometimes all we need is the gentle pressure of a hand that says, "I see you. I'm with you." This is the compassion of touch, not to fix, not to interrupt, but to steady. The Buddha once placed his hand on a grieving monk's shoulder. The man had lost everything: his family, his home, his will to continue. No teaching could reach him. No words could break through the fog of pain. But that simple gesture, quiet, intentional, was enough to bring him back to his breath. Because the body speaks in ways the mind cannot. Touch, when given with care, bypasses thought. It travels directly to the heart. It reminds us, you are not alone. You are still here. You are being held, even in your pain. And this truth applies even when there is no one beside us. You can place your own hand on your chest. You can feel the warmth of your palm. You can offer yourself the same reassurance you long to receive. This too is compassion. You don't need permission. You don't need explanation. You just need presence. A hand placed gently over the heart. A few fingers resting lightly on the belly. A touch that says, "You are safe." We live in a world that moves so quickly, we forget the power of such small gestures. We race to offer answers, forgetting that sometimes stillness heals more than advice. We seek to be eloquent, forgetting that presence is its own language. To reach out just a little with sincerity, with respect, with reverence, that is more than enough. And not only for others, for yourself. Tonight you might be carrying something silent, a memory, a worry, a loneliness that lingers even in rest. Rather than pushing it away, try this: place your hand over the part of your body that feels heavy. Don't press, just rest. And let the warmth of your hand be a comfort, not a solution. Just a reminder, I am here. I have not abandoned myself. I can hold this even now. This act is ancient. Across cultures, across centuries, humans have comforted each other with touch. A hand in another's hand, a forehead to a forehead, a shoulder leaned upon. It is how we say, I'm still with you. It is how we say, even if I have no words, I will not leave. And sometimes it's all we need. You might remember a moment like this in your life. When someone touched your hand as you cried. When someone hugged you without explanation. When someone pressed their palm to your back during a moment of fear or sadness. That memory still lives in you. That comfort has not left. So now, let yourself offer the same to yourself, or perhaps in your heart to someone else. You might whisper inwardly, "May this touch bring peace. May this hand carry love. May this presence be enough." And let your body feel it. Not just your mind, your skin, your breath, your bones. Because sometimes what the heart needs most is not understanding, but contact. And through that contact, a remembering that even in silence, even in sorrow, we are never alone. To offer compassion to the unkind is one of the most difficult, yet most transformative steps on this path. It goes against instinct. It goes against habit. It even goes against what seems fair. But it is in this very challenge that the heart stretches into its full capacity. Because compassion is not just for those who are easy to love. It is also for those who are lost in their own suffering, those who hurt others because they do not know how to care for themselves. This does not mean excusing harm. It does not mean abandoning boundaries or staying where you are unsafe. But it does mean softening the part of you that wants to return pain with pain. It means asking, can I wish peace for even those who do not yet know how to offer it? There is a story in the Buddhist tradition about a cruel king who mistreated many. People feared him, resented him, hated him. But the Buddha saw through the king's cruelty and spoke to the suffering behind his actions. He didn't flatter. He didn't excuse. He simply offered presence. And slowly, through that steady compassion, the king began to change. Because sometimes the only thing that melts hardness is kindness without condition. This does not always lead to visible transformation. Not everyone will awaken. Not everyone will change. But you will. When you choose to open your heart toward those who have closed theirs, you begin to free yourself from resentment, from hatred, from the heavy burden of retaliation. Compassion for the unkind does not require closeness. It does not require contact. It requires only the willingness to wish them well quietly, inwardly, sincerely. And you might start with the smallest gesture. Instead of replaying what they did, you hold space. Instead of building arguments in your head, you breathe. Instead of hoping they suffer, you whisper, "May you find peace." Not because they deserve it, but because you do. Because your heart deserves to rest, not in vengeance, but in clarity. The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. So let the coal fall, not for them, for you. Tonight you might think of someone whose actions have caused you pain, someone difficult, someone unkind, not to stir the wound, but to soften your grip around it. Can you offer them, even silently, the hope that they find healing? Not so you become a martyr, but so you become free. You might say inwardly, I release the need to punish. I wish peace even to those who have caused pain. My compassion is large enough to include the hurting and the hurtful. And in that moment, you become larger than the harm. Not because you condone it, but because you refuse to let it define you. This is the quiet revolution of the heart. To extend mercy where none is expected. To remain soft when the world says harden. To keep your flame lit even in the wind. So breathe now. Not for them, for you. You are worthy of a heart unburdened by bitterness. You are worthy of rest. And your compassion, even in silence, is already healing the world. To hold space without casting blame is one of the rarest gifts a human being can offer. In a world quick to judge, to label, to react, choosing not to judge is not passivity. It is compassion in its most grounded form. It says, I choose understanding over assumption. I choose to witness instead of weigh. I choose to stand near without turning away, even when things are messy, unclear, or uncomfortable. The Buddha once said, judge not the one who stumbles, for the path is uneven, and you have stumbled too. This is not an invitation to ignore what is harmful. It's an invitation to see more deeply. Because often when we judge, we do so from fear, from our own pain, from a desire to create distance between ourselves and what makes us uneasy. Judgment simplifies what compassion seeks to understand. And when we release the need to define someone, to place them neatly into right or wrong, good or bad, we begin to enter the wide space of the heart. There we can say, this person is more than this moment. They are more than this behavior. They are a being, just like me, trying to find their way. When someone is hurting, especially if they've caused pain, it's easy to recoil, to shut the door, to protect ourselves by naming their flaws. But the deeper compassion invites us to stay present, not necessarily close, not without boundaries, but present in the awareness that no one is beyond complexity. No one is only their worst act. And no one wakes up wanting to suffer or to inflict suffering. You may think now of someone whose actions have hurt or disappointed you, someone you've struggled to understand, and maybe you've labeled them in your mind. They're selfish, they're blind, they're cold. But what happens if just for tonight you let those labels rest? What happens if you breathe into the space between judgment and understanding? You might not find clarity, but you will find softness. And softness is where healing begins. This doesn't mean denying your feelings. It means allowing them without adding extra weight. It means saying, yes, this hurt, and I still choose not to close. Yes, I'm confused, and I don't need to draw a final conclusion. Yes, I care, and I don't need to control. This is the mature compassion the Dharma speaks of, not sentimental, not passive, but rooted in the strength to see clearly and still remain kind. You might say now gently to yourself, I release the need to judge. I welcome understanding. I trust that I can hold pain without hardening. And perhaps in this moment, you feel lighter. Not because the problem is solved, but because you've set down the need to carry someone else's story in a rigid frame. You are not the judge. You are the witness. You are the field in which compassion grows. And you do not need all the answers to keep your heart open. You only need the willingness to pause, to breathe, to see. And in doing so, you offer the world something very rare, a place to be human, fully imperfectly, and without shame. To sit with someone's storm without trying to change the weather is an act of deep love. We often believe that to help someone, we must calm their storm, that we must bring sunshine, offer solutions, cheer them up, fix the sky. But sometimes, what someone needs most is simply a companion in the rain, not someone who tells them it will pass, not someone who tries to move the clouds away, just someone who stays, who listens to the wind howl and does not flinch, who holds the umbrella with shaking hands and says, I'll be here for as long as you need. This is not easy, because storms are uncomfortable. When someone cries, panic lashes out in confusion. We want to do something. But the truth is, storms often pass more peacefully when we stop trying to force them away. When we simply sit with the one caught in it and breathe with them. The Buddha practiced this kind of presence often. When monks came to him with grief, he didn't say, "Be strong." When lay people confessed their failures, he didn't say, "You should have known better." He sat. He breathed. He listened. And his stillness calmed more than any lecture could. There is a story of a woman named Patakara. She lost her entire family one by one in the span of a few days. She wandered in grief, incoherent, inconsolable. No one could reach her. But the Buddha did not speak to her right away. He waited. He let her cry. He let her collapse into silence. And only when she had released what needed to be released did he say gently, "You are not alone. What you feel is not a punishment. Let me sit with you." That moment changed her life. Not because the pain disappeared, but because she no longer carried it alone. We can do this too. We can be the ones who don't flinch, the ones who don't run, the ones who sit quietly, steadily beside the storm, letting it rage as it needs to. You don't need to be strong in the way the world defines strength. You don't need to speak wisely. You just need to stay with presence, with breath, with patience. And you can do this for yourself too. If a storm is moving through you tonight, grief, anger, fear, you don't need to make it go away. You can sit with yourself. You can place a hand on your heart. You can say softly, "This is hard. I am here. I will not abandon myself." You might whisper, "I am the calm inside my own storm. I do not need to fix everything right now. I can sit with what is." And in doing so, you'll notice something surprising. The storm begins to shift, not because you forced it, but because it felt safe enough to pass. When pain is not resisted, it moves. When grief is not shamed, it flows. When the heart is not judged, it softens. So tonight, let yourself be the one who stays. With another. With yourself. Let your breath be steady, even if the wind howls. Let your silence be shelter, even if you have no words. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is simply, "I'm not leaving." There are moments when stepping back is the most loving act. We often think of compassion as closeness, reaching out, staying near, holding tightly. But sometimes, it is distance that heals. The space that says, "I care for you so much. I will not try to control your path. I will not stand in your sunlight, even with my best intentions." This is the compassion of distance. It does not abandon. It does not punish. It simply recognizes, right now, the kindest thing I can offer is space. In the teachings of the Buddha, we find a profound respect for autonomy. He never imposed the Dharma. He offered it like a seed, gently, openly, and allowed each person to receive it in their own time. Even with those he loved, he did not chase demand or plead. He understood that growth cannot be forced. And love, when it is true, does not bind. You may have someone in your life right now whom you love deeply, but being close only causes friction, tension, pain, and you've struggled. Because you want to help. You want to stay. You want to show them they're not alone. But sometimes, staying too close clouds both hearts. Sometimes, you can't be a healing presence unless you step back. To breathe. To let them breathe. To remember your own center. This is not failure. This is not coldness. It's clarity. And it's one of the hardest, most compassionate things you'll ever do. To love someone and still choose space. To trust that the thread connecting you is not broken by silence or time or distance. To trust that letting go of constant contact may actually open the door to true connection. We confuse presence with proximity. But presence lives beyond miles. You can love someone fully and still let them walk their own road. You can support someone deeply without standing beside them every moment. The heart knows how to stretch. The heart knows how to stay soft, even from afar. Tonight, if you are carrying the ache of stepping back, know this: you have not failed. You have not withdrawn love. You have honored it. You might say softly to yourself, I step back with love, not resentment. I trust their path, even when I cannot walk it. My compassion does not depend on closeness. And breathe. Let your heart adjust to the openness. Let your hands rest from holding. Let your breath return to you. Because compassion is not only in the reaching out, it is also in the quiet act of release, not to detach, but to make room. Room for healing. Room for return. Room for you to come home to yourself. There is a tenderness in this kind of letting go. It's not the end of love. It's the widening of it. So tonight, offer that space to the one you care for, to the parts of you that feel afraid, and trust that what is meant to stay will find its way back when the time is right. Until then, you are still loving. You are still here. And your distance is, in truth, another form of closeness. There is a hunger that lives deeper than the body, a hunger for kindness, for meaning, for a moment of rest from the weight of living. To feed this hunger is an act of sacred compassion. We often think of giving in terms of physical needs, food, water, shelter. And of course, these are essential. But human beings also carry a more invisible kind of need, a hunger of the spirit, a need to be seen, to be remembered, to be loved without condition. And when we learn to offer nourishment for the heart, not just the hands, we begin to feed the world in its most quiet and enduring places. The Buddha fed people's spirits with his presence, with his patience, with his unwavering calm. He once said that a kind word spoken with sincerity can sustain someone longer than a meal. That to sit with someone in sorrow is sometimes more nourishing than any material offering. Because the spirit hungers too. It hungers for acceptance. It hungers for belonging. It hungers for a breath of peace in the noise of life. You may have met someone today whose face looked tired, but they said they were fine. And maybe you didn't know what to say. But your smile, your slowness, your way of not rushing, that may have fed something in them, and you may never know it. But the soul remembers kindness, especially when it comes without cost, especially when it arrives without fanfare. Tonight you might ask, where in me is there a hunger that words can't name? Is it the need to be seen, the longing for someone to understand, the ache to feel light again? Whatever it is, you don't need to fill it all at once. You can begin with presence, with breath, with the quiet assurance that you are allowed to care for your own spirit not only through solving or achieving, but by offering yourself gentle attention. That is spiritual nourishment. You might say, inwardly, may I receive the kindness I offer others. May I be fed by silence, by stillness, by love. May I remember that my soul is worthy of care. And in that remembering, you create space for others to feel it too. You feed not only your own hunger, but the hunger that lives in the hearts around you. Because when someone meets your softness, when they sense your patience, when they rest in your calm, they are fed. They may not say it. They may not even realize it. But something in them breathes easier, and the hunger quiets. This is how compassion becomes sustenance, not only in crisis, but in daily life, through a kind glance, a longer pause, a deeper breath, a willingness to stay a little longer even when there's nothing to say. So tonight, let yourself receive what you so often give. Let your breath nourish you. Let your presence feel full. Let your heart be fed by the knowing I am enough. Not because you've done everything, but because you've brought light to someone else's darkness, maybe without ever knowing it. And that is the most nourishing act of all. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is leave the door open. Not to chase, not to plead, not to persuade. Just to leave the door quietly ajar so that when someone is ready, they know there is a way back. This is the quiet offering of return. Not with conditions, not with judgment, simply with space held in love. The Buddha spoke often of patience, not just the patience to endure difficulty, but the patience to allow others their journey. He never pushed. He waited. When disciples left the path or wandered away, he did not condemn. He did not slam the door behind them. He simply continued walking. And when they returned, he welcomed them not with bitterness, but with a calm heart. This is the kind of love that does not tighten. It trusts. And trust is one of the highest forms of compassion. It says, even if you walk away, I believe in your capacity to return. Even if we're far apart now, I believe in your light. You may have someone in your life who has grown distant, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and your heart aches. You want to reach out. You want to make it better. You want to pull them back. But sometimes what's needed most is not force, but stillness. A quiet love that waits without waiting. That holds the space open without grasping. That says, this door does not close. This place in my heart remains warm. Not every relationship returns. Not every wound is mended. But the compassion of an open door brings peace to you too. Because it means you are not clinging. You are loving without holding. You are caring without controlling. And that is true freedom. Tonight, you might reflect on someone you once held close who has now drifted away. Not to reopen pain, but to soften around the absence, to light a small candle at the threshold of your heart. You might say gently, the door is open. There is room here still. I will not rush. I will not chase, but I will remain kind. And you may say the same to yourself. Because sometimes you are the one who has left your own heart, turned from it, shut the door on parts of yourself that felt too messy, too afraid, too difficult. Tonight, you can reopen that door. Slowly, gently. No questions asked. You can whisper to the forgotten parts of you. You're welcome here. You can return when you're ready. This is how healing begins. Not with force, but with invitation. With the quiet promise there is always a way back. Let your breath now be that open door. Let your chest expand with that kind of welcoming. Let your spirit remember, love does not disappear. It waits, it breathes, it trusts. And in that trust, everything changes. You become a refuge, not only for others, but for yourself. A place someone can return to even after the storm. And tonight, perhaps that someone is already on their way. What if you can't fix the pain? What if the person you love is hurting and nothing you do seems to help? What if your words fall short, your presence feels small, your efforts go unnoticed? This is the ache of helplessness. And yet, even here, especially here, compassion has a role. Because sometimes, bearing witness is more powerful than repair. To be with what cannot be changed is a sacred act. The Buddha never promised to erase suffering. He didn't offer an escape from life's sorrows. Instead, he taught how to remain present steadily, gently, even when no solution exists. There was a story of a woman named Kisagotami. Her child had died, and in her despair, she carried his lifeless body from house to house, begging for medicine. The Buddha listened, not with pity, not with panic, but with calm. He told her, "Bring me a mustard seed from a house where no one has lost someone they love." She searched all day. Every home had known grief. By nightfall, she returned not with the seed, but with understanding. Her pain wasn't unique. Her loss wasn't a punishment. And the Buddha had not taken her pain away, but he had helped her carry it. You may not be able to change what someone else is feeling. You may not be able to lift them out of their sorrow, but you can sit beside it. You can stay. Without needing to fix, without needing to speak, you can say with your presence, "I won't run from this with you." And in that stillness, healing begins not by resolution, but by companionship. Pain is not a problem to be solved. It's a truth to be honored. And when someone feels that their pain is not too much for you to hold, even imperfectly, they begin to breathe again. You can offer this. You already have. Even tonight, your willingness to listen to sit with this story, to open your heart, this is your compassion in action. It may not feel like much, but to the one in pain, it might be everything. And what about your own sorrow? What about the ache that no one has touched? The grief that lingers in quiet corners? You too deserve witness. Not judgment, not solutions, just space, just breath, just a quiet whisper. This hurts, and I do not have to face it alone. You might say to yourself now, I do not need to fix this to honor it. My presence is enough, even in silence. I am allowed to feel without needing answers. Let these words soften your chest. Let them quiet the part of you that wants to do more, say more, be more. You are already enough. Not because you have solved everything, but because you have stayed. And staying when there is no clear light, no map, no fix, is sometimes the most courageous thing of all. So let that be your peace tonight. You don't need to make the pain disappear. You only need to be a witness. To say, I see you. I'm with you. This too belongs. And in that, something begins to heal. There is a quiet strength in not turning away, in staying near what feels uncomfortable, in keeping the heart open, even when the mind longs to close. We are taught to run from discomfort, to distract, to fix, to flee. But the Dharma invites a different path, a slower, steadier presence with what is, not because pain is good, not because sorrow is noble, but because in staying, we stop the cycle of fear. The Buddha called this bearing with, not enduring with clenched fists, but remaining with a soft, alert heart. When Mara, the personification of fear, doubt, and temptation, came to visit the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, he did not chase Mara away. He said simply, I see you, Mara. He acknowledged what had arrived. And then he made tea. That's what the stories say. To welcome even fear as a guest, to say you are here. I do not have to love you, but I will not pretend you're not real. And in that act, Mara lost power. Because fear thrives on avoidance, but it quiets in the light of attention. You may not be under a Bodhi tree tonight, but perhaps something in your heart feels unsettled. A thought you don't want to think. A memory you'd rather not revisit. A truth you've been too tired to face. What would it mean to sit beside it? To light a small candle? To say, I see you. I will not turn away from you tonight. You don't have to make it better. You don't have to understand it fully. You only have to stay. You might place a hand on your chest and whisper, "This too is allowed. This too can be here. This too will pass." And as you breathe, notice how the moment softens, not because the discomfort is gone, but because you're no longer running. You've made space. And in that space, peace can breathe. The kind of peace that says, I no longer need to fight everything I feel. I can sit. I can listen. I can hold. This is compassion, not for the pain, but for yourself within the pain. It's not weakness. It's not indulgence. It's wisdom. Because when you stay close to what is real, even the hard parts, you reclaim your freedom. You are no longer driven by escape. You are anchored in presence. And presence is the ground where healing begins. So tonight, if a visitor comes, anxiety, sorrow, regret, don't lock the door. Open it gently. Say, I see you. I'm here. And then breathe. Let the storm pass through. Let the silence settle in. You are not alone in your discomfort. You are not wrong for feeling it. And you do not need to turn away. Not tonight. Not from this. Not from yourself. There is a certain dignity in slowness, a quiet grace in not rushing, in pausing long enough to feel what the moment holds, rather than reaching for what comes next. In the modern world, speed is celebrated, productivity is praised. Slowness, we're told, is weakness, something to overcome. But the Dharma whispers another way. Slowness is not failure. Slowness is presence. It is the rhythm of the breath, the pace of a mindful step, the silence between two thoughts. The Buddha walked slowly. He spoke slowly. He ate slowly. Not because he lacked energy, but because he chose depth over hurry. Because when you move slowly, you begin to notice. You begin to see the space between moments, the subtle shifts, the quiet beauty, the truth that so often hides in the rush. Tonight, let this be your permission to slow down, to move through this night, not with urgency, but with reverence, not with pressure, but with patience. You may not finish every task. You may not answer every message, but you can meet this moment, this breath, with your whole being. Try this now. Inhale slowly, then exhale even slower. Feel the ground beneath you. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands rest. Let your mind soften. And say gently, I am not in a race. I am not falling behind. I am right where I need to be. This kind of slowness is not about pace. It's about intimacy. About being so present with what's here that you don't need to chase what's next. You might take one mindful breath after another. You might walk from one room to another with deliberate grace. You might listen, truly listen, without waiting to speak. This is how we return to the heart, through stillness, through attention, through the simplicity of slowness. And when we live this way, compassion becomes natural, because we are no longer too rushed to notice suffering, no longer too distracted to offer a kind word, no longer too busy to sit with someone fully, deeply, quietly. The greatest acts of love are often the slowest. A gentle touch on a grieving shoulder, a long silence shared without discomfort, a letter written by hand not typed, a presence that lingers when everyone else is gone. So tonight, walk slowly, speak slowly, breathe slowly, not as a performance, but as a prayer. Let your whole being say, I am not rushing through my life. I am honoring it with every step. This is your refuge. This is your rhythm. And within it, the world softens. Within it, you begin to remember what truly matters. Not how fast you go, but how deeply you are present. So slow down, dear one. Let the night unfold like a quiet poem. Let your breath be the verse. Let your body be the ink, and may this slowness carry you into peace. The softest presence can carry the deepest truth. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to be certain to be wise. And you don't need to be perfect to be loving. There is a strength and gentleness that the world often overlooks. But in the Dharma, gentleness is never weakness. It is the fruit of deep understanding, of seeing clearly the causes of suffering and choosing not to add more. The Buddha's voice was said to be like a lion's, yet he rarely raised it. His teachings were clear, but not sharp. His gaze was steady, but never hard. Gentleness, in his way of being, was power made peaceful. And you too carry this kind of power. When you choose to respond with kindness, even when you could react with anger. When you soften your voice, even when your feelings swell. When you listen without interrupting comfort, without fixing, except without judging. You are embodying a truth deeper than words. You are saying, I understand that we are all doing our best. I see the ache behind your actions. I choose not to harden my heart in return. That is the heart of compassion. It doesn't mean you have no boundaries. It means your boundaries are infused with love, not bitterness. It means you can walk away without hate. You can say no without rage. You can protect your peace without punishing someone else. Tonight, if you feel bruised by someone's words or confused by someone's silence, let this truth come gently. You do not need to meet force with force. You can meet it with breath. You can meet it with presence. You can meet it with stillness. And that stillness will speak for you. There is a quiet dignity in not needing to prove yourself, a mature love in not making others small to feel safe. You might say softly now, I release the need to be right. I honor my truth with calm. I choose gentleness as my strength. And you'll notice something shifts. The breath deepens, the heart eases, the tension softens. Because gentleness is a medicine. It calms the nervous system. It opens the closed door. It builds the bridge back to trust. Even in chaos, even in misunderstanding, even in the aftermath of pain, you can be gentle. Not because the world is gentle, but because you are no longer ruled by its turbulence. Because you are choosing a different way. And this choice, quiet as it may seem, is transformative. So as you settle into this night, let your gentleness be your prayer. Let it radiate from your breath. Let it rest in your voice. Let it flow through your thoughts. May you wake tomorrow, not with armor, but with softness. Because the soft heart is the strong heart, and yours is enough. Compassion begins where judgment ends. It's easy to love what's lovely. Easy to be kind when others are kind to you. But the real measure of the heart is what you do when someone disappoints you, frustrates you, even hurts you. This is not a call to accept mistreatment, but it is a call to see deeper, to remember that every harsh word has a story behind it, that every closed heart is guarding an old wound, and that every person, even the one you least understand, is shaped by suffering you may never see. The Buddha saw this. When someone insulted him, he did not retaliate. When someone walked away, he did not curse their name. Instead, he quietly reminded his followers, hatred is never overcome by hatred. It is overcome by love. This is an eternal law. That doesn't mean turning yourself into a doormat. It means refusing to let someone else's darkness dim your light. It means choosing clarity over resentment. It means looking at someone's anger and seeing their fear, looking at their coldness and seeing their hurt, looking at their pride and seeing their pain. You may never get an apology. You may never see them change. But compassion isn't about the outcome. It's about who you become in the process. Tonight, reflect gently. Who have you been judging? Maybe it's someone from your past. Maybe it's someone close. Maybe it's yourself. Judgment feels righteous at first, sharp, certain. But eventually, it hardens the heart. It builds walls around your joy. So what happens when you begin to set it down? Not to approve, not to excuse, but simply to see with fresh eyes. You might whisper, they too are on their path. They too carry hidden sorrows. I can choose peace even if they never change. And for yourself, I forgive myself for the times I didn't know better. I release the harsh voice inside. I return to gentleness. Compassion is not a feeling, it's a way of seeing. And you can choose it even now, even when your heart feels tight, even when the memory still stings, even when the story feels unfinished. Because when you drop the judgment, you make room for breath, room for healing, room for love, not the easy kind, but the true kind. Let that be your offering tonight. A softening, a loosening, a quiet whisper to the parts of yourself still holding tight. You can let go now. You are safe. And in that letting go, you might just find yourself again, freer, lighter, wiser. Gratitude is a doorway to peace. Not the forced kind that denies pain. Not the shallow kind that says, just be positive. But the deep, steady kind that lives side by side with sorrow and still sees beauty. The Buddha often spoke of gratitude not as a moral obligation, but as a natural fruit of awareness. When you see clearly, you notice more. The breath in your chest, the softness of evening light, the friend who stayed, the stranger who smiled, the meal, the shelter, the silence. So much we miss in our striving. So much we overlook while waiting for something better. But peace does not wait in the future. It is tucked into the folds of now. And gratitude is what unfolds it. There's a story told in many Buddhist traditions about a man who, in the middle of a long and difficult journey, sat down beside the road and wept. He had lost his way. He was tired. He was afraid he would never arrive. But then he looked up and saw the moonlight catching the dew on the leaves. He noticed the coolness of the earth beneath him. He heard the quiet hum of night insects, steady, unhurried. And slowly, his tears softened. Not because his journey was over, but because he realized he was not alone. Something was holding him. And in that holding, he felt gratitude. Tonight, you might pause too. Even if things are hard, even if answers haven't come, even if your heart is tired, you can still say gently, I am grateful for this breath. I am grateful for the space to rest. I am grateful for one thing today that reminded me of goodness. And if you feel nothing, if your heart is heavy, that's okay too. Gratitude isn't forced. It arises like dawn, quietly, softly, sometimes only after the darkness lingers for a while. You might think now of one thing from today, just one that brought even a flicker of peace. A bird's call, a warm drink, a kind word, a moment of silence. Let that small thing fill your awareness now. Let it grow larger in your heart, not to erase your pain, but to hold it gently. Gratitude doesn't deny sorrow. It simply says, even here, there is something good. Even now, I can still receive. Even in my pain, there is light. You don't need a grand reason. You don't need everything to be okay. You only need to open just a little. Let your breath be the invitation. Let your awareness widen. Let your heart whisper, thank you. Not because everything is perfect, but because in this moment something is still whole. And that is enough. Silence is not emptiness. It is the language of the heart when words grow tired. It is where the deepest truths live, unspoken but not unseen. The Buddha often entered silence, not as retreat, but as communion. In the forest, beneath the Bodhi tree, among monks and wanderers alike. He knew that beyond teachings, beyond answers, there is a stillness where wisdom settles, a quiet that heals. You may have felt it too, those moments when words no longer serve, when presence says more than speech ever could. A shared look across a room, a hand held in grief, a breath taken beside someone who simply understands. Silence does not mean nothing is happening. It means something sacred is taking root. In your own life, silence can become a refuge, not a withdrawal, but a returning. To what is real, to what is enough, to what doesn't need to be named to be known. Tonight, let silence wrap around you like a soft blanket. Not as loneliness, but as company. Not as void, but as fullness without form. You might pause now and listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole being. What do you hear? The hum of distant traffic, the rhythm of your breath, the soft creak of the room settling, or perhaps simply stillness. Let it be enough. You don't need to fill it. You don't need to explain it. You only need to allow it. And in that, allowing, you discover that silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of space. It's where the noise of the world can rest, where your thoughts can soften, where your spirit can begin to speak. So often we fill our lives with sound, afraid of the quiet, afraid of what we might hear in the silence. But silence is not the enemy. It is the teacher, the healer, the mirror that gently shows you your own depth. You might say now, I am not afraid of silence. I am willing to listen deeply. I am safe in stillness. Let those words echo softly, then dissolve. Leave room. Let your breath rise and fall without hurry. Let your heart settle into the vastness of quiet. And if emotion comes, let it. If memories arise, welcome them. If nothing happens, that's perfect too. Silence is not a performance. It's a homecoming. A way of being with what is without judgment, without grasping. And the more you trust it, the more you find that the answers you've been seeking in noise were already waiting in the quiet. So tonight, honor silence as sacred. Let it speak for you. Let it hold you. Let it remind you. Peace is not always loud. Love is not always spoken. And truth is often silent. Letting go is not losing. It's not giving up, giving in, or turning away in defeat. Letting go is an act of love, a surrender, not of hope, but of attachment to what was, or what might have been. The Buddha often spoke of grasping as the root of suffering, not because desire is wrong, but because clinging to anything impermanent will eventually lead to pain. A breath held too long becomes strain. A hand clenched too tightly begins to ache. And the same is true for the heart. We hold on to memories, identities, expectations, even to our pain, not because we enjoy suffering, but because it feels safer than the unknown. But what if letting go is the beginning of freedom? What if it's not falling, but floating? Not emptiness, but space. You might think tonight of something you've been holding tightly. A person, a version of yourself, an outcome you desperately wanted, a story you've told yourself over and over. Feel the weight of it, feel the pull. And now, just for a moment, loosen your grip. You don't have to let it all go at once. You don't have to force anything. But what happens when you allow just a little softness, just a little breath? Letting go might sound like I can't control this. I don't need to carry it all. I trust the unfolding, even if I don't understand it yet. And you may cry. You may feel afraid. You may feel free. All are signs of release. All are holy. Because letting go is not rejection. It's recognition. That everything arises and passes. That love does not need possession to be real. That peace does not come from having, but from being. Letting go does not mean you don't care. It means you care enough to stop forcing. You care enough to make room for newness, for truth, for what wants to come in when your hands are open. There's a story of a monk who carried a heavy load of water up a mountain every day. One day, he tripped and the pot broke. He wept not for the broken pot, but for the effort he had poured into keeping it safe. But that evening, he noticed the path he walked had begun to bloom. Each crack in the pot had watered the earth. Letting go of the vessel gave life to the journey. You too have poured so much into something. And maybe it's time to honor the bloom, not the burden. To release not the love, but the holding. To walk on lighter. You might whisper, "Now I let go of what I cannot change. I let go of who I no longer need to be. I let go, and I remain whole." Let your breath carry that softness through you. Let your body feel the weight drop even slightly. And know this, letting go is not an ending. It's a return to peace, to trust, to yourself. Peace is not found in perfect conditions. It is born within imperfect moments when we stop resisting what is. The Buddha never promised a life without pain, but he showed that peace is possible even within it. It is not about escaping the storm. It is about learning to rest underneath it, to find the still point even when the world keeps spinning. Tonight, ask yourself gently, what am I waiting for before I allow myself to be at peace? The next achievement, the next apology, the absence of fear, the completion of some imagined version of yourself. What if peace didn't require any of that? What if peace was available now? Not because everything is right, but because you're willing to be here, fully, kindly, present. Peace is not a finish line. It's a decision. A breath taken without hurry, a thought released without judgment, a moment received without resistance. Try this now. As you breathe in, say softly in your mind, "Here." As you breathe out is peace. Again, here is peace. Feel what changes. Maybe only a little, maybe just enough. Peace rarely arrives with fireworks. It comes like moonlight, quiet, gentle, unnoticed, unless you're still. And when you are still, you begin to see that peace was never somewhere else. It was always within, under the clutter of thoughts, beneath the stories and striving. Behind the fear and the noise, there it waits like a still lake beneath rippling waves. You don't have to chase it. You only have to stop chasing everything else. The Buddha described this as cessation, not annihilation, but the ending of restlessness. The mind finally ceasing to spin outward and turning inward to rest. Tonight, you are invited into that rest. Not because you've earned it, but because it is your nature, your birthright, your home. You might whisper, "Now, I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to fix everything. I can let myself be at peace just as I am." Let that truth settle. Let it wrap around your tired thoughts. Let it rock you gently into quiet. The world may still be noisy. Your questions may still be unanswered, but right here, right now, something in you has softened. Something in you remembers. Peace is not a prize. It's a practice. And each time you return to this breath, this stillness, this heart you are practicing, and peace is already here. Forgiveness is not a gift to the other. It is a gift to yourself. It is not forgetting, excusing, or approving. It is simply this, a choice to stop carrying the pain forward. The Buddha once taught that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Yet we all carry coals, don't we? Moments of betrayal, words we cannot forget, absences we never understood. The wound may be old, but the fire can still sting. Forgiveness begins when we grow tired of being burned. It doesn't begin with the other person. It begins when your own heart says, I don't want to hurt anymore. You don't need to know how to forgive all at once. You don't need to force what your heart isn't ready for. But you can begin by softening, by loosening the grip on the story, by remembering that forgiveness is not for their freedom, it's for yours. It might start with a breath. It might start with a whisper. I want to be free. I want to stop replaying the pain. I want to reclaim the peace that belongs to me. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It doesn't mean ignoring wisdom or boundaries. It means refusing to let what hurt you continue to shape your life. It means choosing love over bitterness, not because they deserve it, but because you do. And sometimes, the one we most struggle to forgive is ourselves, for the thing we did or didn't do, for not knowing better, for not leaving sooner, for hurting someone we loved. And yet the Buddha reminded us, even the darkest night has the promise of dawn. You are not the worst thing you've ever done. You are not the sum of your mistakes. You are a being in motion, in learning, in becoming. And tonight, you can say gently, I forgive myself for being human. I forgive myself for not knowing then what I know now. I give myself permission to begin again. Let those words move through you like warm light. Let them settle in the places you've hidden shame. Let them lift the weight you were never meant to carry forever. Forgiveness is a softening. It's a space opening inside your chest. It's the breath that says, I want to love more than I want to blame. And love begins with you, with your own hand on your own heart, saying, I'm still here. I still matter. I can still grow. So tonight, let forgiveness be your medicine. Even if it's only the first sip, even if all you can say is, I'm willing, that is enough. That is everything. Everything changes. This is the quiet truth the Buddha placed at the heart of all his teachings. Not as something to fear, but something to understand deeply. Because in that understanding comes freedom. Impermanence, anicca, is not just a concept. It is the rhythm of all things. The breath rises, then falls. The sun sets, then rises again. Sorrow comes, and joy eventually follows. Seasons pass, moments fade. People arrive, stay for a while, and then go. And through it all, we are asked to loosen our grip, to love without clinging, to grieve without being broken, to live with open hands and a soft heart. It sounds simple, but it can feel like the hardest thing in the world. Because we want to hold on to what brings comfort, to keep those we love close forever, to preserve what's good and avoid what's painful. But nothing, no matter how beautiful, can remain unchanged. And this is not cruel. This is what gives life its poignancy, its urgency, its radiance. A flower is not less beautiful because it wilts. Its beauty is because it wilts. Because its time is brief, we pause. We inhale its scent more deeply. We hold it gently. This too is how we might live, fully, tenderly, aware that this moment will never come again. Tonight, let this truth be a comfort, not a threat. If you are in pain, it will pass. If you feel lost, clarity will return. If you're holding joy, cherish it deeply, for it too is a traveler. You might whisper, "Now I allow things to change. I soften my resistance. I trust in the rhythm of impermanence." Let those words move through you like a tide. Let them take what no longer needs to stay. Let them remind you that clinging does not stop change. It only brings suffering. And release brings relief. The Buddha once said, "All conditioned things are impermanent." When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering, not by running, but by turning inward, by seeing clearly, by bowing to the truth of change. So tonight, let the past soften. Let tomorrow rest where it belongs. Be here with what is, with this breath, with this moment, with this heart that keeps beating through every season. You are not falling apart. You are flowing forward. Everything changes. And in that truth, everything is possible. The path is walked step by step, never all at once. There's a gentleness to the Buddha's way that often goes unnoticed. We think of enlightenment as a flash, a sudden blaze of clarity. But more often, it comes slowly, like dew forming before the dawn, like a seed that turns toward the light inch by inch. The Eightfold Path is not a checklist to rush through. It is a rhythm of living or returning. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Each one an invitation to walk a little more clearly, a little more kindly, a little more awake. And yet how often we feel behind, as if we should already be wiser, calmer, more at peace. But the Dharma does not shame your slowness. It honors it. The Buddha never asked perfection, only presence, only a willingness to begin again. Tonight, wherever you are on the path, pause. You are not late. You are not lost. You are on the way. Even when you feel stuck, even when your steps are small, even when you forget everything you've learned and start over for the 100th time, especially then, that too is the path. Because the way is not outside of you. It is the way you speak when you're tired, the way you listen when you disagree, the way you breathe when no one is watching, the way you return to stillness when everything pulls you away. And every moment is a chance to walk again, to turn your face toward the light again, to take one more breath as if it matters, because it does. Each gentle choice is a step. Each kind word is a lantern. Each quiet pause is a gate to something sacred. You might say softly, "Now I walk this path at my own pace. I honor my progress even when it's unseen. I begin again without shame." Let those words settle. Let them wrap around your weariness like a soft shawl. Let them remind you there is no finish line. There is only this moment, and this moment is more than enough. So walk gently, forgive often, rest when you need, and trust that the path is already beneath your feet. You are not behind. You are becoming, step by step. Compassion is the final gate and the first step. In the end, and also in the beginning, it all comes back to this. Compassion, not just a feeling, but a way of living. A way of seeing others not as strangers, but as mirrors. A way of remembering that every being wants what you want: to be safe, to be loved, to be free from suffering. And when you know this, not just in the mind, but in the heart, your whole way of moving through the world begins to change. The Buddha lived this. He met kings and beggars with the same gaze. He touched the outcast without fear. He saw through anger, through greed, through ignorance, and found the hurting heart beneath. You can do this too. Not always perfectly, but again and again, with patience, with presence, with softness, Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you might imagine the faces of those you encountered today. Maybe someone was kind to you. Maybe someone was cold. Maybe someone left you confused. Can you look at each one now and say, you too are on your journey. You too carry burdens I cannot see. You too deserve peace. And then turn inward, toward the face you know best, your own. Can you say, I too am trying. I too carry pain. I too deserve compassion. Let this be your final offering today. Not a doing, but a being. Not a solution, but a softness. The world may not always understand compassion. It may prize force, speed, efficiency. But your spirit knows a deeper truth. That compassion changes everything, not by control, but by connection. It melts walls. It bridges silence. It brings light into places long darkened by fear. And so, as we draw near the end of this journey together tonight, let's rest in that light. Let it glow quietly within you. Let it warm your breath, your bones, your dreams. And may it ripple outward, unseen but deeply felt, touching all who meet you. Because the quiet power of compassion is this: it doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It simply is. And its presence heals, one heart at a time, starting with yours. Now, everything slows. The breath lengthens. The thoughts grow quiet. You have walked gently through a long night of listening, of remembering, of softening. There is nothing more to figure out right now. There is nothing more to hold on to. Let the words fall away like petals. Let the mind settle like dust in still air. You are safe here. You are loved here. You are whole, even in your becoming. With each breath out, let go. With each breath in, receive peace. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw soften. Let your eyes close if they haven't already. And hear this: you do not need to try harder. You only need to rest deeper. The Buddha once said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Tonight, you have touched that peace. Let it carry you now, through dreams that feel like prayer, through a sleep that renews not just your body, but your spirit. Everything is okay for now. More than okay. Everything is complete. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a peaceful night.